for a few days, came back, and they were destroyed. And I actually was standing with the hive open the day that I saw the last bee fly out. And I, like, cried.
Okay.
I was just like,
they just evacuate, right?
So a lot of them will die.
They don't have any food.
If they don't have food, some of them will leave. They'll relook. Like, there's different things that can happen. But, yeah, when I went back in, like, a day or two later and just was like, okay, so what next? And I couldn't even find bees at first. And then one of the last frames I pulled out had a bee on it. And she just flew away. And I was just like...
Hey, it's been a good one, but...
yeah, and I just
I ain't got the rent money this month, dog.
Mama za kungibete ngowe kumoyi ingumada takana okyoso kinu kibangase Manuele ngando mushisamye Manuele
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 47 of the Two Left Feet podcast. On today's episode, we have the amazing Shae Thomas. She is a New Orleans native, born and raised here. She went to LSU, graduate. Hey. Cool episode because Shae didn't start dancing until later in life. So really cool episode to see, her upbringing, what got her into dancing, and where she's at now, which is so amazing because Shae is an amazing dancer, an amazing follower, and it's just a reflection of the hard work she's put in. She's also a beekeeper, a part-time beekeeper, which is amazing. I've never met a beekeeper in my life, so stay tuned for that, man, because that part was absolutely crazy. So many questions, so many answers. That was easily the best part of this episode. I was not expecting to learn so much about bees. But really cool episode. Let's get right into it. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Two Left Feet podcast. Today we are joined. Well, actually, let me say I'm your host Terrence Greer, joined by my co-host Ms. Francesca Peña.
Hey y'all.
And today we are joined by the wonderful Miss Shae Thomas. So, if I'm not mistaken, you are the owner of Shae Shae,
yes,
which is a small bath and body business based at New Orleans.
Yes.
You sell handmade soaps, candles, lip balms, and a lot more products as well.
Yeah.
You're born and raised in New Orleans, is that correct?
Yes.
Show enough.
Absolutely.
You went to LSU where you received your bachelor's degree in graphic design.
This is correct.
I never knew that. I didn't know you were actually a graphic designer as well.
Yeah, that's one of the hats.
Okay, so I said, you do a lot. you have plenty of information on your Facebook page. I want to ask you, how you doing today? How is everything?
It's good.
Okay.
It's been an interesting Saturday. Gorgeous outside.
Yeah, it is nice.
The weather is up and down, but today we're having a good day.
Yeah,
so
so nice. I want to ask you, Shae, tell me, what was it like growing up in New Orleans?
I mean, I think I didn't really realize what that would have meant if you had asked me that a couple years ago. But now that, as you get into adulthood and you meet people from other places and you live other places, you start to realize the comparison of your childhood to other people's. Yeah. And so I would actually say my childhood and growing up in New Orleans was unknowingly epic.
I had to ask you, please elaborate on that. What do you mean?
Well, for example, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is by a lot of people who've traveled around and lived in different places, and they go, you've lived in New Orleans your whole life. Like, don't you want to live somewhere else? And I'm like, and, they were like, well, you don't want to live somewhere else? I'm like, it's not that I don't want to live somewhere else, but everywhere else I go, like, New Orleans is still, like, hanging in the fight,
Sure enough.
There's still always something that's going on and cultural experiences and, to partake in. So it's not something where I go someplace else and I go like, oh, I wish I had this back home.
Okay.
It's just kind of like, oh, cool, that's how y'all do it. Like, like, cool, like this is how we do it. It's interesting, but I don't feel like I've missed out by being in this city because this city just has too much to offer.
It's a lot. It definitely is a lot. I want you to tell me about your childhood though. What was that like?
So I kind of had what I describe as like the dynamic duo for parents. My dad, who is, he's just one of those like really smart guys that like is the hardest working person you will ever like meet. And so he, I think, really was a person that was introspective enough that he wanted to make sure that his kids kind of got exposed to a lot of stuff. And he was super active. He used to do a lot of running, marathons, things like that, like not just in the city, but all over the country and stuff. So with him, he's a total goofball. Like, he's a sweetheart. But he's just a really good dad.
Okay,
like,
awesome.
I can honestly
That's
say that.
awesome.
Like, I'm blessed to
That's
have
so
a
awesome.
dad like him. But my mom, on the flip side, she's like super organized, like that planner who, like, she can get it done.
Okay.
And she's brilliantly crafty. So my mom she created the culture in the household of like bringing in good food and bringing me to all these different activities and events and like really getting me to what people now say is my like obsession with having hobbies.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
she's really the person that put a lot of those experiences in front of me and said like, do you like it? Do you not like it?
Okay,
You know,
yeah, that's
and
cool,
so
though. She opened
between
your
the
mind
two
to
of
it.
them, yeah, like I always tell people they could do anything.
Sure enough. Yeah. Oh, I had a question for you. Oh man. So, growing up in New Orleans and everything, did you grow up in like a dancing household at all, or?
So that's the funny thing about this. So my mom, like I was saying before, she always put stuff in front of us to keep us active, and I think unfortunately I was a challenging child.
Okay.
Okay.
I had to stay busy. Like
Okay.
that is part of
Yeah.
my personality is to stay occupied. It's a poor thing. Like the struggle was probably real. But my mom always had my brother in Boy Scouts, so I always joked that when I wasn't in ballet classes, I was in the woods.
Okay.
And so I really had this like appreciation for dance being so different from some of the other things that I was, you know, hanging out with and like doing on the weekends and stuff. But she does not dance at all. Like when I say my mother does not dance, I mean like I have seen my mother do dancing, like movement to music, like once in life.
Okay, once.
Like really once.
Okay.
And it was only recently after like several
Oh,
years of being
wow.
like,
As an
you
adult.
really don't dance. And she's like, yeah, no, I do. I totally do. You remember that time when we were like together in the circle? And I'm like, what you talking about? But the flip side of that, my dad is a little bit more of the social one as far as like family weddings. He, you know, get up and do his little two-step. So like I've danced with him. And then I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me, Brock. And he's like a dancer on the slick.
Oh.
Like, it's one of those things where, like, we went on a family cruise and went to the teen club, and then my brother, like, busted some moves, and I was like,
Okay.
Oh.
where has this been?
Right, where this come from?
Like, you've been always right on me. So I don't ever describe myself as a person that comes from a dancing family. I didn't have a mom that danced, you know, all these things before and, like, just raised me in that environment. But my mom did put me in dancing, like, at like age 3. So
you say ballerina or?
So I started off classically, ballet. I added in tap. Over time, we got into like lyrical, contemporary character, jazz. Once I got into my teenage years, I was like hip hop.
Okay. Yeah.
And things like that. And then actually moving into college was really more transitioning from hip hop into reggaeton. Like that was kind of my introduction into the Latin world. And then eventually by going to LSU and things like that, learning about group exercise. By that point, things like Zumba and stuff had become trendy and popular, and I really appreciated that because that really exposed me to Latin music more than I had ever, you know, heard before in my life. So getting exposed to that kind of transitions me into other forms of dance that I hadn't already been in.
I definitely understand that. I was I'm curious. Do you know what brought your parents to New Orleans or like Louisiana?
So my dad's family was always here. My grandmother, she's only in her older age, like moved away from the city to live with other relatives and things like that. I have like a cultural mecca family in Atlanta.
Okay.
But their family otherwise is really anchored here. Now my mom on the flip side, her dad was in the military, so they moved around. She actually was born in like Lincoln, Nebraska or something really random.
Yeah.
But at one point they lived in California when she was younger, and then right before she got to like middle school, they moved to New Orleans, and he was stationed here. So that's how her family kind of came back here. And then her mom, her family was from here as well.
Okay.
So it was one of those situations where it's like, where should I move to on a base? And it was like New Orleans. And so that's how she ended up in the city.
Okay.
And my parents just happened to live up the street from each other.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
So that's kind of how that got anchored here in New Orleans, and they've just never really left since.
Yeah, I get you. That's good. So you pretty much you know, a big majority of your family's here, right?
Yeah. So they've here and there, different ones have scattered around, cousins especially, because like I said, when you get into the college years, you know, people go to different places for school and stuff. I have a good chunk of my dad's family in Atlanta, and 1 or 2 relatives elsewhere. But New Orleans is definitely the place we all call home.
I get you. I
So,
definitely understand that. So you know, you're growing up here and everything. And surprisingly, you decided to stay in Louisiana and go to school here. Just that in-state tuition? What made you want to stay?
I'm gonna say in-state
just
tuition.
family.
You know,
family.
the whole TOPS.
Yeah.
But I mean, in all honesty, I would say I'm more close to my family now than I was before I went to college. Just because as you mature, I think you start to appreciate family.
Yeah, so
you know,
true.
you realize the value of it when you, especially with things like Katrina and things like that, where you you're away from people, you're away from the things you're used to. It just becomes so much more valuable. But I mean, even so, we've had family here. I've been elsewhere. I've moved around, and just with school, I was like, you know, I've gotten into different places around the country. Like I did have options. I did have tuition bills that I was like, how are we gonna pay for this? Because being in graphic design, I actually was gonna go to Savannah College of Art and Design.
That's Georgia, or?
Yes, it's right at like the very bottom.
Yeah, my sister was born in Savannah, so yeah.
Nice, and it's beautiful there.
Yeah, I heard it's actually like a little party city.
It does have a little bit of a little thing, you know, but it's close to the coast. I think it's like 40 minutes or something from the coastline, and so you can go to the beach there. And I actually went to a program out there for school before I even picked colleges, and spent like 2 weeks in the dorms.
Okay.
Like, on the campus.
I know something you're talking about.
And so that was really great to do that. And again, like it just is kind of one of those things that help you evaluate what you want to do. But I just realized I was like, you know what? I am a person that has too many interests. And while I do want this to be my career, to be in graphic design and things like that, and art, because I've always loved the arts in general. I was like, I think I want to be around like different types of people, like not just art folk. And Savannah was reasonable in general for like moving, for tuition and stuff like that. It just was like, I think I'd rather be closer and in a school that isn't just art based.
I understand. Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that decision got made. And then, like I said, TOPS.
Yeah,
that tuition payment. I was like, I'll take the extra money.
Well, so hold on. Hey kid, come here. Hey, if you could leave like and subscribe for the channel, share with the people, that'd be amazing.
I'll take the extra money.
Well, so hold on. I don't know TOPS tuition.
So TOPS, I don't even remember what it stands for at this point.
Okay.
But it's a program that's still around. It's way different from what it was when I was in college. But essentially, TOPS was founded by this guy who had a lot of money from his life, and his livelihood that he wanted to pass on was tuition to people in Louisiana who were trying to get education.
That's awesome.
So there's like minimum requirements for it as far as like grade point average and things like that, just reasonable things, and it would pay for your tuition for 4 years.
For a scholarship,
or
what?
like eighth semester, and like your tuition bill. Now, obviously, there's probably some things that slip between the cracks and things like that, but generally speaking, your tuition bill is paid
some
for.
assistance is always cool.
No, it's a lot more assistance than you get today. So I mean, obviously, like your meal plan and things like that, those are additional add-ons.
Okay,
and such.
Right,
but,
I get you.
Or like if you upgrade your dorm, like maybe it's not the same
I
thing,
get
but
you.
your tuition bill is paid. Your
I
education is
understand.
paid for.
I get you.
And so that was the program that existed at the time that I was going to college, and so. Yeah, I mean, it was free money.
Of course,
it was if you do what you're supposed to do, you can have
that's awesome.
college tuition.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like it was a huge deal to like, take that extra bit and run with it.
I definitely understand that. I just got scared that the tape was gonna collapse on us.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was like, oh man, that'd be crazy for the video.
You just add in a little like music.
So yeah, you're growing up and everything. Go to LSU. Tell me, what was LSU like? And LSU, is that in Baton Rouge?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is in Baton Rouge, and I think y'all have mentioned Baton Rouge on podcasts.
Yeah,
before.
definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, Baton Rouge is like an hour and 15 minutes away
Not
from New
far at all.
Orleans. I know for us that's like what? I have to drive how long?
Yeah.
New Orleans takes 15 minutes to get through. Like if you have to drive 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, really?
Right? It is kind of like that.
Versus people in Houston, right? Like they're used to driving an hour to and from work.
That whole city is just a highway,
yeah,
right?
it's an hour to get home, But I just say that for reference purposes. But no, so Baton Rouge is an hour and 15 minutes away. I always jokingly call it a template city because it's got all the basics that you need. It has everything. It's got the apartments. It's got housing. There's affordable stuff. There's expensive stuff. There's a mall. It's got all the basics you need. There's a downtown. It's like 2 blocks, but there's a downtown. But there's LSU, and so that's really kind of like blood pumping in the heart of the city. And so like I went to LSU, and I was a little nervous about that because you've got the argument of like everybody goes to LSU because it's it's LSU, everybody loves it, and then there's like the but it's actually a good college. Like we should actually go there.
Okay.
So when I was studying programs for graphic design, I actually found out that they have an accredited program for graphic design.
Nice.
So my focus was always on my art stuff. Till to this day, I'm still not like
sports,
like a huge like sports and
I
diehard
understand.
party
Yeah.
person. Like I like to tailgate here and there, you know, but like I wasn't like the crazy like party fanatic. But it was nice to definitely be around it. I feel like by going there, I did get a like college experience,
sure
you know.
That's a big school too. There's a lot of people, right?
It's a good bit of people, and I mean, you do meet a lot of people from out of state and stuff like that.
It's
It's
a
not
D1,
strictly
so,
just like your friends from
Right.
But you do see them too, and you're like, how's
Okay.
it going?
Yeah.
You know? What class is you in? You know?
Exactly. I mean, yeah.
But it was good, and I think for me too, like culturally, it was enough of a distance away from my parents and enough of a distance from like home life that it definitely felt independent, which I think is like the big question people have when they want to move away. It's like, well, I don't want to be around the corner from my mom, you know? Like,
I mean,
but still, it was close enough that like, okay, I had a meltdown this week. Like, I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, it's like close enough but far enough at the same time, right?
Yeah, and that for me at least. I mean, I'm sure everybody's got their own measure of that, but bless you. But it works for me, and I had a really good time.
That's awesome.
Like, it was an adjustment. Obviously, it's college, right?
Right.
You're like learning how to be an adult
Exactly.
on your own. Like, I'll still never forget the first night I fell asleep in a bed on a college campus, and I was just like, oh, what have I done?
Right.
But no, it was a lot of fun, and like I said, I really dove into the art world and ended up getting exposed to Latin music, ironically, when I was out there, and just starting to fall in love with that. And so as you find the things that you love, like things become more comfortable in life.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm curious, what got you into art as a child? Like, is that just what you gravitated towards?
I mean, I guess it was just in me. I mean, my mom, like I said, is super crafty. Like, the woman can like sew, but like doesn't need a pattern to figure it out. And I can't read a pattern to save my life.
Okay.
But like she's just got that mind.
Okay.
Like she just, I mean, if it was costumes for, you know, a biography project, like she could figure it out. If we were like decorating flyers pre-computer era, like she was like, we're gonna do this and we're gonna make this stamp and we're gonna do this. Like she's just a creative mind.
That's so awesome.
And so I think like a little bit of the
Pass it
genetics
down to
from
you,
that
right?
kind of
Yeah,
filter,
yeah.
like it didn't translate 100% into like sewing skills on my end, but I think it translated into a lot of dancing. Ironically, that like she's the person that does the dance. So I think that really just like, despite the fact that she wasn't a dancer, she was a creative person. And so my upbringing had a lot of creativity in it, and that was just what you did, you know, like, cool, we've got problems, let's figure out solutions, you know?
Okay.
So I think that was just how part of her personality like took on life, was in a creative respect, and so that passed on to me.
I definitely understand that. I'm curious, you have siblings, right? I know at least one
just
older
one brother,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm curious, did he get that creativity gene?
Yeah, he was into the arts as well. He didn't really do dancing though, I feel like, until college. He took like ballroom dancing classes and stuff like that, which was kind of, I was like, what, you signed up for what?
Ballroom.
Because I remember him coming home one day and we were like, look, let me show you how to do merengue.
Hey,
I'm like,
okay.
Well, a what?
Right,
What are we
right.
doing? But yeah, so like he really didn't do that side of art until older, but I mean, he was always in art. Like he was my big brother, and like I can remember him like painting stuff and drawing things. And I guess as a child, I really just assumed like he would just always do that. But I think as he got older, and I remember like the family discussions, everything, when you have that first child, like the whole family partakes in like the decision making of stuff, right? Because like nobody's ever done it before. I remember like him trying to decide like, what am I going to go to school for?
Okay.
And yeah, that was
Big
kind of the
decision.
weird thing. Like he'd been in scouting, he was super active in sports and stuff like that. He did the cross country and the skateboarding. He was a snowboard instructor.
Okay. Oh,
like
wow.
again, like we were in
New Orleans.
everything.
How does that work?
Right? No, and I skied and stuff like that. So like my
Obviously
parents would take us
somewhere else.
to like Colorado or California and things like that
wow.
for Mardi Gras some years. Once we finally got older, and they were like, okay, I think y'all are good on this. They would take us out to the mountains because it was like that was something different that we hadn't
That
done before.
is.
So now my parents hated it because they were like, our feet are too old for this. But we loved it. So like I ski, he snowboards. He actually ended up being a snowboard instructor. And I think to some degree that's kind of how he got interested in his actual field, which is he's in physical therapy.
Oh, right.
He's a physical therapy assistant, and he works with a lot of people with, you know, body movement and things like that. And so of course, like anytime I'm like, oh, my knee's a little sore after dancing, he's like, oh, you want me to stretch it out? I'm like, yeah. Let's talk about this.
Please.
But he's always always say he got the patient card when it came to the two of us. Like, he was that person that, like, even though I'm sure I drive him crazy as his little sister, he's just, I think he realized that about himself, that he was intuitive enough to, like, sit down and problem solve and help. Like, he's just really good at helping. And, you know, so he ended up going into a field that really, like, you have to be patient. You have to be able to problem solve with people with, you know, essentially these restrictions and really break things down and, like, you know, that slow moving train of progress. And so that was, like, his major skill that I just, like, never wanted to have to deal with unnecessarily. I was like, no, let's go. That was me. And he was just like, let's talk about it first. So yeah, like, we got into a lot of fun hobbies and crafts and things like that. And just in general, we took different paths, I think, but he definitely started out in the arts. And I think now it's just more of an actual, like, creative thing he does for fun, as opposed to, like, his career.
Where's he stay at? Is he?
So he stays on the West Bank.
Oh, okay. So he's still here. He's still in New Orleans, the West Bank.
He's in Old Gretna, right off the river. So he actually just moved out that way. But he's having a good time with it. He's got his little shotgun double that he hangs out in, and I just bought him a hammock for his birthday.
All right, so
I was like, go chill.
Hey, sure enough. I definitely understand that.
So, yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, what happens after LSU?
So after LSU, I actually stayed in Baton Rouge for a few years, longer than I would have expected, because there was no plan after Baton Rouge. It was just like, get a job, like, you need to get a job.
Right.
So in my frantic type A, like, I've got to stay on it and stay active mentality, I started job searching. I remember in February before I graduated, and I was like, I'm so stressed out. I'm a month behind starting to look for jobs. And my friends were like, what? You're looking for jobs already? And I was like, yeah, like, I need to be employed by this summer, right? Like, that's like, what do you do if you don't have a job after you get out of school? And they're like, go home. But I actually...
Two different families right there.
Yeah, right? And don't get me wrong, home was New Orleans, so it wasn't like it was a bad option. But I ended up actually staying. I signed a contract with Whole Foods to start working for them, and I was their graphic artist associate.
Oh, okay, nice.
And so I actually started working for them before I even graduated.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So it was a little crazy.
Full-time gig, or what you mean?
Yeah, like, it was like, I transitioned the first few weeks. My manager at the time was like, hey, look, I totally want to do this. And they were really good with working with me at the time, because there was two different positions that they had. They had a guy who had already been there before, who had, like, trained in the position I took. And so they moved him up and they had him train me.
Nice.
And what ended up happening was, like, the position that I actually got wasn't even originally available. They liked me so much from, like, interviewing in general for that department that they actually called me up 3 weeks after that whole interview setup went through, and they were like, hey, look, we know you said you wanted a full-time gig, and we didn't have a full-time gig for you before, but we got one.
Nice.
And I was like, what? And I remember I was at a portfolio review in New Orleans at the time, and, like, they're, like, calling people's names, like, come, you know, up and get your portfolio review, like, we're gonna look at your artwork. And so I'm at this conference where, like, essentially I'm getting evaluated so I can, like, get a job. And they're calling me like, hey, we got a job.
That's awesome.
So I was like, well, what are the details? And he told me the stuff, and I was like, okay, well, can I talk to my mom about it? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, take a couple days. Just call me by the end of the week. I was like, okay, cool. And so I remember, like, I hightailed it out of that portfolio review and went home, and I was like, you're not gonna believe this.
That's awesome.
I got a job.
Yeah. I know they're happy for you.
Yeah, like, so it was actually really great. I transitioned into that job right before graduation, and I just kind of explained to them, like, look, I got, like, 3 more weeks of school. I just need, like, part-time for, like, 3 weeks, and then as soon as I graduate, y'all got me. Like, I'm here.
That's awesome.
And they were great about that. So I went, and my coworkers were, like, the best. Like, it's, you know, they always say you stay at your job, like, for the people around you.
Yeah.
And that was definitely true. Like, they were really awesome people.
That's awesome.
And just artistic, awesome, culturally diverse, like, group that really made my time in Baton Rouge, like,
that's awesome.
Good. Like, they knew how to balance the stress with me, and that was really awesome. So I was here. I ended up around that time getting into Zumba instruction because I fell in love with classes with Natasha Johnson Cooper in Baton Rouge, and she still teaches. I actually just saw her posting some classes last night. I was like, I miss you so much. But she was who trained me originally and got me to take over when she had her 3rd baby when I was in her classes. And she's like, do you want to get certified? And I was like, really? And so that's kind of how I got into that. So I started teaching Zumba like a couple times a week, taking over her classes as she left for maternity leave. And so I just had this really awesome like mix of like I did my art during the day, I left work, went straight to my Zumba classes, like left that, went to Fernando's and got my like carne asada. Like I was good. Like I had this really golden era is what I called it.
I want to talk about Zumba. I remember so when I first started getting into Zumba, I would say I dance Zumba and people would mistake for Zumba.
Like, no.
Yeah, like no, not that. Tell me, so Zumba, if I'm not mistaken, is like that exercise dance exercise?
It was started by this dude named Beto, and he basically, I mean, he really just wanted to create a fitness class that was cardio based, that was dance based, but that was Latin based.
Okay,
and
I didn't
so
know that. Latin based.
there's, if you go look up like the Zumba website now, there's like 1,001 different versions. And what it is it's basically applying the original principles of Zumba to different styles of fitness. So, but the thing that I kind of tell people is like, if it's got Zumba written on it, then it should be like Latin music. Like that's kind of like what you should expect. So if it's Zumba toning, like you're going to be doing toning exercises with Latin music.
Okay.
But there's like basic 1 and basic 2 toning, Zumba Gold, Zumbini, Zumba Aqua, I think it's called. They just recently released their Strong brand, which is like a whole nother division of it. But what's cool is like things like, say for example, Zumba Golds, that is designed for deconditioned individuals, whether it be that you're just an older person that has mobility issues, you're a person who just got injured and maybe you're like still in therapy for rehabilitation, things like that. They've got like stuff like that that's got that same vibe that Zumba has, but that's conditioned for that type of exercise.
That is awesome.
And so yeah, it's the thing that I like about it is really diverse. It gets a little crazy because you're like trying to keep up with all the different forms of Zumba. But basically that's what you should expect in a Zumba class, and that typically the formula is supposed to be 70% Latin music and 30% world. So anything else that your instructor will want to mix in. And basic 1 is like the default original Zumba class, and that includes like 4 styles of music typically, which is like the reggaeton, the salsa, merengue, and I'm forgetting the last one, but there's like one other one. And just each one kind of advances. Like Zumba Basic 2 has like flamenco and things like that in it. So it's generally speaking, like I said, it's just Latin music based, but it's interval training a lot of times and structured to each fitness style.
Is it, again, if they're playing salsa music, are you actually doing like a salsa basic or?
So that depends on your instructor.
Okay.
And that's kind of something that I'm like really, I will take some pride in saying, like I tell my students all the time, I'm like, look y'all, I was like, I teach y'all the real deal. Let's go to a Latin night, you know? Like I try to get my students to really understand that like this is.
Do you still teach or you mean back?
Yeah, no.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I transitioned to New Orleans. It was a little bit of a like slight break between my classes because I had to find a new gym when I moved back home. But after I was in Baton Rouge for a couple years, I actually was able to transfer my job to, I was the opening artist for the Broad Street Whole Foods Market that they had. And so, and they only had 1 artist at the store as opposed to like me and what was when I left, like 3 people who were doing all the artwork for this like $1 million store essentially. So when I left, it was like, you're the only act. Like, so I had to open the store, I had to work with the regional team, like all that stuff.
I don't even know, they have artists?
So yeah, so graphic artists at Whole Foods Market stores. I don't know if y'all remember back in the day pre-Amazon, like there was tons and tons of like chalk art, and each store kind of had its own vibe and theme and feel. And so they always had an in-resident artist who did that work. Some stores even had like a dedicated chalk artist if that store had a lot of extra like chalk art as they called it, which wasn't always on a chalkboard per se, but it was done with like the chalk art feel. And so for my store, I was the sole person to do all of the artwork for that building. And so yeah, once I got settled with that and was like, okay, like I'm doing that, I like bought my house, got a new car, you know, I was like, okay, I'm established. And then I was like, so what am I gonna do for fun? And so that was kind of where like dancing came back into the picture. Like as soon as that got settled, I was like, okay, what gym can I go teach at? So I went and found some gyms that were open. It was like, all right, I'm gonna go teach classes twice a week there. So that's when I started back with my Zumba, and then I was like, okay. I remember I ran into 3 different people in maybe a week's time who were telling me about this place called Dance Quarter. And they were like, yeah, like I'm gonna do these classes at Dance Quarter, like you should come. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I ran into somebody else at one of my festivals, and they were like, yeah, you like dancing? Like, yeah, like I do classes at this place called Dance Quarter. I'm like, that's the same place that this chick just told me about.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing was, the first person actually that I met in the whole Dance Quarter situation was Sergio. And I met him at Gretna Fest like 2 years before all of that, and he'd give me his card. I was like, oh, you like to dance? And I was like, yeah, like I do Zumba and blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, if you're going to do classes, I teach classes at dance court. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And legit had his car for 2 years. Like, not to be like,
that's what he told me. He told me
like,
he took a break.
2 years, and before I ever like joined
that's
the
what he said.
community here. But I told you I'm in graphic design. Like, I don't throw away business cards. So like I had the card, and so when I ran into these people all in like 1 week, I was like, go get that card. Like that card, I'm positive had dance quarter on it. Like that dude was at dance quarter. So sure enough, like everything just was same thing. Dance quarter. So I ended up like going online and looking at the schedule. And like, okay, I'm gonna go take a class. And so that was kind of how that, what I would call authentic actual like instruction for like salsa and things like that got put into my Zumba classes, because they teach you the basic steps in your training, but like they don't teach you social dancing in your training. So like they're really more focused on you knowing the basics of the music and the basics of like these are the types of momentum wise like moves that you can do to this music that's safe or that will exercise this, you know, this muscle or that muscle. So you don't get the social aspect of the dancing. So even though I was listening to salsa music for like forever and dancing salsa, technically I wasn't dancing it socially. And so that's where the dance community kind of really fostered that for me.
I say, but listen to the music, you know, I imagine once you started learning it, that helps you pick it up quicker.
Definitely.
If you knew the music, oh man, that makes a world of a difference.
Well, I would even go further to say I think the most important thing is it's just enjoying the music.
Okay, if you actually like it, right?
I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is what you need to dance or that's what you need to dance. Like I can make recommendations based on what it seems like you like, but I tell people all the time, I'm like, pick something that you like the music for. I was like, who wants to dance to something that they hate the song? Like you don't want to sit in a car, let alone dance. Like
you don't get in the car and play
like
music
put on
you
some
hate.
music you hate. Yeah. So that's what I tell people. I'm like, if you like the music, if you appreciate the music, you'll appreciate the dance a lot more.
Of course.
So
I definitely want to get into, you know, dance quarter and surgery and all that. But I'm very curious about this. Do you want a beehive? Like a bee? Is that correct?
I'm like, I almost feel like we should just start listing off the hats right now.
Right.
She's a graphic designer. Okay. She's a beekeeper.
You
She's
a
got a
beekeeper?
body care business.
So you actually have a beehive. You're a beekeeper.
So yeah.
Please tell me about that. I'm very interested.
I remember being in Baton Rouge and being like, I really want bees. Like just sitting outside. Like y'all hear me talking about the weather earlier. Like I was just like, it's so nice outside. I wonder what the bees are doing.
Okay.
Like
and
my weird
please
little
let's
world.
just take a time to admire your shirt as well.
You know. There we go. Yes.
Sure enough.
So my brother's girlfriend got this, I believe from Dirty South.
Okay.
It's a graphic t-shirts place. So she got this for me for Christmas, and I actually have a
bee necklace. All right.
on today. I like
All right. Sure enough.
a bee necklace on today from
enough.
Nola Silver, and they like a lot of my jewelry comes from them.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I just always really liked bees. Like not that I knew a ton about them.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I grew up in nature half the time. If I wasn't in the dance studio, I was, like I said before, camping and things like that. So I think I kind of had an exposure to Mother Nature that I appreciated. It's like, you know, there's like things out there that like do cool things.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, so I had an ant farm when I was little.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've always kind of had like the affinity for like pets and animals and insects and things like that, the outdoors.
So I would never equate insects to pets, but please continue.
Well, like I had the ant farm, for example, was structurally very similar to keeping the bees because like the ants have like they're like world.
No, real quick, Dama. Would you ever have an ant farm?
Don't ask me how I had an ant. I think
I'm so sorry.
The idea of an ant farm would never cross my mind.
They only last so long though, because like you never get
the life.
You don't get a queen ant. Like when you get ant farms, like I'm sure people like go get them or something, but like I had the one that you give to like little kids.
So it's something like you buy from a business, right?
So yeah, like they used to have in the mall. It was, I think now it's the Discovery Channel store or something, but there was like a nature store that I was like, if we go to the mall, we have to go here. So I got into nail art that way because they had like natural nail polish that you could like do nail designs. I still have the book to this day.
Hey.
They had like the coolest, most innovative, just like things. And again, being the child that I was like, I need to be occupied by all of these things.
Right.
So at one point they stocked ant farms and you ordered your ant farm. Like you bought the book and then like you sent off your little subscription for your ant farm and they would send the ants in and you'd like set them up in their little viewing box.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you'd watch the little bad boys just move sand all day. And like, I remember I could just sit there and be like,
okay.
look at them go. And so that,
It sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, like
I would come visit you and check out yours, but
well, they're like they're closed. You know, they're in there. They're not gonna get out.
Until that day where
that day where you're like, oh no, I fell over.
you overrun.
You're like, don't go in there. Yeah, so like I don't know. They're like society. Like I said, like my mom is the planner.
It is a society, yeah.
I totally was like, these ants have got it done. Like they know what. You know, like what to do and how to, like they function so well, and I just always respected that. Like as weird as that sounds, like I respected the ants. And so, you know, as I got older, like you hear little things, just movies, clips on TV, Discovery Channel, whatever, and you're like, oh, dude, like bees do some legit stuff. Like they got like their little, you know, like
they have a big impact.
Yeah, they've got their plan too. Like when you're this many days old, you do this. When you're this many days old, you do that. I was like, well, shoot, I wish I had it together like the bees. And so, just as I got older, just for whatever reason, I would always hear little tidbits about bees and be like, man, they're so cool. And so, like I said, when I was in Baton Rouge, I remember I had my apartment and my balcony and all this. I was like, so how much does it take to get bees?
How much does it take?
And I read up on like what you need to actually have bees. And I remember the first thing that I took away from it was that people in New York have bees on their rooftops. And I was like, boom, I can get bees. I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. So I didn't get the bees immediately because my landlord would have killed me and evicted me. But I did get bees when I moved to New Orleans. It was like one of the first things I wanted to get when I got my house.
Is that what you like looking for a house? It needs to this and be able to have bees in the backyard?
Yeah, I was like, okay, get the house. Cool. I was like, okay, now get bees.
Okay, shut up.
Like you haven't ordered a sofa, but get bees. So yeah, I went and I ended up looking up Louisiana State University has like the LSU Ag Center information that you can go, and they like monitor the earth around here basically, but they can kind of pinpoint you to the apiaries in the area and like the bee clubs. There's bee clubs, like
I believe it.
Thing.
Yeah, I believe
I know,
it.
right? I've been to the meetings before.
Yeah.
It's really funny. They're like, so my queen today, and I'm like, what? But yeah, so I remember I went before I ever ordered bees. I even went to a bee club meeting.
Yeah.
I was just like, let me go talk to the people. Like,
yeah,
I was so
I've got
scared.
no idea what that is like.
And I didn't tell like a soul. Even that was the other thing. Like I was so scared everybody was gonna be pissed that I got bees. Like especially like my parents. Like our daughter got a house and then the idiot bought some bees. I was like, responsible decisions, Shae. And so I was like, it's for the environment.
So I mean, I want to. So many questions. Is that expensive? Like, what is it like caring for them?
It's really not bad. So basically, what I tell people all the time, bees essentially pay for themselves in honey after like the first year or so, a year and a half safely. Typically, a package of bees costs about $150 if you're buying the bees themselves. And a package of bees. So let me break this down real quick. You can get bees a couple different ways. You can catch what they call a swarm, which is around this time of the year in the spring. Like you see the bees going crazy. Well, after they go crazy for like 20 minutes, they go and relocate. It's kind of like a mass exodus, but what it is these hives split. So they're like, all right, half of y'all move out. And so they leave and they take a queen and they dip out and they relocate, and that's how the hives kind of spread. But it happens a lot of times when these hives get overcrowded. So, but there may be like bees that remain that raise a new queen, and it really does split the hive. Sometimes it's a relocation, but it just depends. But you can catch a swarm.
You say like go out with a net and you're like, come here.
Well, that's kind of the crazy thing. I've never caught a swarm. I kind of want to, but I'm kind of scared.
Yeah.
But it's not so literal in that you're not like really going and like being the aggressor to get them. You really put like what they call a nuke, which is like a mini hive. And a hive is like essentially a wooden box with some frames of wax in it. Like legit, they look like picture frames that are empty. And so you go stick that out there. There's things to bait the bees to find it.
Well, what do you bait it with?
So they've got like things they've made from nature, but also lemongrass oil. Lemongrass essential oil mimics the pheromones of a queen bee. So you put that. This is gonna sound so jerry-rigged, but you put that on like a Q-tip, like a cotton swab, whatever you're, in like a straw to keep it moist, and you stick that bad boy in the hive. Okay. And you go stick the box. Usually, like some people say, like up in a tree kind of things, where they're like more likely to go. But there's like the notion of like you just go put this box out there essentially, and these bees, what happens is they smell all that. They smell the flowers, they smell the pollen, they smell these things in the environment, but they'll smell that lemongrass oil. And so when the bees are going and scouting for new locations, they go and they like find the box and they find this new location and they go report it back. And the hive swarms and moves. So that's one way. Another way is to get someone else to catch a swarm for you, which is what I've done. I'm like, you catching swarms? Cool, give me a call.
Yeah.
And a lot of beekeepers just in general, and pest control people even tend to end up being beekeepers because they'll remove hives that have like swarmed into someone's like shed, things like that. You can call them up and be like, so you got any hives? And like you can get them for free.
Yeah.
So the big thing is equipment.
Yeah, right.
And then the other options, like I said, is to actually like physically go to like an apiary and like buy bees, and they'll give you same kind of concept with a nuke box, which is like that smaller box, because they're not giving you like this hive that's been around for like 50 years or something crazy. They're going to give you like a new hive that's young with a fresh new queen, and you raise that. And if you don't do that, you can do it's called ordering a package of bees, and think of it as a chicken wire box.
Okay.
And it's gonna be this box. Usually the queen comes in her own like queen cell cage, they call it, and she's got like a little bit of sugar or something that she gets to eat while she's in there. And essentially they just like express mail you, overnight mail you some bees.
Okay.
I know, right? You're like,
I'm like, what is going on?
I
These
wonder
bees
like
are
what the
everywhere.
postal service thinks of this, because it's only like USPS that does this.
Ah.
But and there's restrictions on the zones, like how many zones it can go
What
for
you mean by
shipping
that?
them. So like
okay.
because the time that it takes to get
Right.
from one part of the
They
country
can't
to the
ship
other.
it so far. Okay.
Yeah, so they'll have that as a stipulation when you order them. But I picked up bees from a guy out in just outside of Baton Rouge when I was living here, and I had my house. And then I had another hive that I got from a local
So you have
beekeeper.
two hives.
I have 2 hives.
Oh wow. And they have to stay separate, I guess, right?
So they're in their own separate boxes, yeah. And the bees can actually smell the difference between like the boxes. So when you see these pictures, like if you go Google like beehives or like bee farms or whatever, you'll see they're on like these big fields and there's just like tons of them. And I'm like, so how do they know which box is
Yeah,
theirs? Like I would
pheromones,
be like, wait, am I 4 from the left or
Right,
12 from the
yeah.
left? Like how from the
Which
right,
one does that
left?
stay
Yeah.
at?
So, but they can
Like
actually
pheromones, right, and
the
everything?
pheromones from the queen is how they know. And what's the funniest thing that I tell people all the time, I'm like, oh, you have bees? I'm like, yeah. I was like, I love to just watch them. They're like, wait,
You're not
what?
scared, right?
Like what do you watch? And I'm like, I watch them twerk.
You want to watch them twerk?
And they're like, what? I'm like, no, like I'm serious. I watch them twerk, and I swear people like never take
Are
me
you
serious.
taking notes, or what do you mean?
And so legit, so we all have seen the videos of people twerking
Yeah,
and been
yeah.
to the clubs and seen people twerking. I literally mean bees twerk.
That's how they communicate, though, right? Or
so
what?
What happens is, and you should totally Google this. This is actually a real thing. It's what I call it, but there's other people who have nicknamed it twerking as well. So the bees, they communicate with pheromones. The queen communicates with pheromones. It's how they're networked, despite the fact that they don't talk with speech. They talk through vibrations and pheromones primarily. And just like with the lemongrass oil, when they smell that, it's a communication to them. They use that to thrive. So what happens is you have bees that will actually go outside the hive, and they will start to fan their wings, and they will stick their little bottoms up on the back of the hive, or in this case, the front door of the hive, if you will, and they'll fan their pheromones, and they actually, it looks like they're moving their bottom up and down and up and down, and they do this on the wall of the front of the hive, and I call it bee twerking because they're essentially catching the wall.
Yeah.
And so they get on the front of the hive, and they do this, and what happens is it helps to fan up the pheromones of their hive into the air, so when the bees are circling around and coming back, they find their hive.
Okay.
So
About
see,
team
twerking
boys.
has purpose.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Twerk, baby, twerk.
I guess like the equivalent in the club is like you fan your perfume while you're doing that, and then like your man is like, hey,
Yes,
that's
he
where I'm
is.
at.
Yes, he is. So there's so many questions. Are they?
I'm just like, what?
Do you keep them enclosed, or like are they free to come and go as they please?
I've gotten that question before, and I'm really glad you said that, because like that's the thing I didn't realize people didn't really like know, I guess, because nobody keeps bees. but yeah, so beehive boxes, the hive itself is comprised of several boxes that basically stack. So think of it as like stories.
Got a little apartment complex.
Yeah, they've got a little apartment complex, exactly. And different floors of the apartment complex have different things on them. So the first floor is usually what they call a deep, and it's a deep box. It's several inches longer or higher in height than some of the upper boxes per se. But what it is that's where the heart of the hive is. And it's put on what they call like a foundation, which is basically like a little thing to keep it off the ground. But it's where the entrance of the hive is. And so this box has like a tiny little cutout in the front, and that's literally where the bees like walk in and out of their front door. It's their front door. It's like keeping your front door open. So just imagine your front door is like 12 inches wide, and you're like a quarter of an inch tall.
Right.
So they have this entrance, and at different times of the year, you may reduce that entrance down. So like in the wintertime, they have entrance reducers, as they call them. And it's essentially a stick of wood that fits into that slot, but that has a tiny little hole so that they don't have to try to keep that cold air out in the wintertime.
Right.
Or for like a new hive when they're really young, it's harder for them to stay protected from like outside like insects and things like that could attack them, for example, or like cause damage, because it's not the bees that they're after necessarily, but it may be like the honey or something. So and there's such a thing as honey robbing, where bees will sneak into other bees' hives and steal their honey, which is totally just gangsta. But but anywho, so they will they'll have that entrance reducer for times like when they're a young hive or when it's really, really cold outside. And then outside of that, the queen mostly stays in that first or second box, and typically people will do like 2 deeps is what they'll call it for that bottom portion, and that's where the babies are laid. That's where all like the main like activity of the hive, the heart of the hive is. And then past that, people will put shorter boxes called like mediums or even shallows, and the only difference is just the height. One is taller than the other. The reason why they have these differences is honey is heavy. Like when I tell you honey is heavy, like I used to complain about lifting soap because soap is heavy. Honey is just as heavy. I lifted about 100 pounds of honey off the hive this past, I think it was February. I did the harvest, and yeah, like I'm rivaling like some serious poundage with honey, and like and to harvest it is like it takes time, honestly, as a hobbyist. So when you're doing that, some people will do what's called a frame hive, which is just 8 frames wide. Some people will do a 10. I have 10 just because I'm greedy, and I was like, I want 10 frames when I harvest. But the difference is really about what you can manage to lift, because these hives are heavy. You cannot just like roll them down the street, pick them up, lift them up. You know, like that's just it.
So when you say you're harvesting it, are you like actually taking the boxes away from them, the shallows and the deeps?
So yeah, you can actually find videos on my pages about this, because I was like,
and also, are you like in the gown? I've seen like you have to be, right?
Everybody loves to know what I wear too. It's the funniest thing. I'm like, well, I guess I could go out there willy nilly, but
it's not a good idea.
I mean, the biggest reason why I do stuff is I am a hobbyist. Like I'm not like this like 40-year veteran of like beekeeping, if you will. So
you're gonna get there eventually, I bet.
Hopefully. I feel like those
Back
people
in
are like
my day,
super wise. I'm like, and a lot of those people will like take you under the wing and be like, this is what you need to look for.
Okay.
So I've had beekeepers come to my house, to my hives, and like show me like, this is what you need to do when you're like opening this up. But to your answer, like, so when you harvest honey, first things first, you have to open up the hive. So before you do that, you get your smoker, and your smoker, I usually burn like newspaper, cardboard. I'll have like wood chips and like little twigs and things. But what that does is that kind of it kind of sedates them a little bit. It masks some of the pheromones. So for example, if like a bee got really threatened by something you did, it kind of is like putting them in a different room and being like, sorry buddy, you can't talk to your friends right now, even though they're 2 feet away. So that's kind of the thing that the smoke does. It calms them down a little bit. It masks the communications, and additionally, this is kind of the only thing I don't like about it. You don't want to over smoke your bees, because 1, it's smoke, but 2, the bees kind of take that as like an instinctive signal that like something may be not wrong, but that like there may be fire.
Exactly.
And so what they do is they go and they binge eat on honey after that. So it's a good way to drive them into the hive, because they basically kind of go in and start like funneling themselves further and further into the hive and like eating. So I actually have a lot of pictures of the bees like surrounding a droplet of honey, and they're all like, drinking it.
Do you know why they eat it?
So that's their food, and the sad part is it's kind of like their like last meal that they'll kind of do, like thinking that there may be something wrong. So it's like a precautionary thing to eat before they may have to like evacuate.
Okay.
But I try not to think about that.
Yeah.
Because I always feel bad. I'm like, nothing's wrong. I'm just nosy.
Yeah, I'm here to take your food, though.
Yeah, I'm here to check on you too without dying. So,
take your food.
And I do technically have a bee allergy, so I do carry an EpiPen. But I've never been stung though.
How do you know you're allergic then? I'm curious.
I've had like extensive allergy testing done. I'm like allergic to the earth, but
that's crazy. You're allergic to bees, and you're a beekeeper.
I'm just like over here listening.
You live life on the edge.
I have an allergy to ants too, ironically. But what I've noticed about that is just that like what I've learned about allergies in general, when someone says they're allergic to something, that doesn't mean they automatically die from it. It just means that their body has an extra response to it. And that could be a variety of things. There's even stuff under allergies where you would call it an intolerance or a difficulty.
It's probably like different severity levels, right?
Yeah, and so like with ant bites, because I have at least had ant bites before, like they just don't go away. It's like a month and a half of like misery because I'm like, this ant bite's still here, you know?
Wow.
So, and it doesn't swell up. I don't get like, you know, 2 shoe sizes bigger or something if an ant bites me on my foot, but it's still just annoying. And so that's what I know about ant bites. I'm praying bees is not that much worse.
Right.
But on the grand scheme of like looking at the scientific paperwork on it, bees are on the lower end for the insects that sting. But I'm
what you mean by that, lower end?
So like they give you like these IgG scores
for
and
you
ratings.
Personally.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
like for me, like that's what they say.
I get you.
But like for example, paper wasps, and
Paper
like
wasps.
wasps in general, I have like a like way higher reaction to apparently. So I'm like I have.
I don't
If
mess
you
with
show
wasps.
up at my house, there is wasp spray on the porch year round. I don't want to know what that does. I'm willing to take a bee sting. I'm not willing to try my luck with a wasp.
You more brave than me because I'm not willing to take a bee sting.
So I'm just like, but I do wear, I have a canvas jacket that like, it's really cool how it seals up and zips up, but I have that. I have gloves. Yes, I have gone in my hive with no gloves before. It's actually easier. I only do it when I'm doing just like a quick check. Like outer frames and stuff like that, like the upper boxes, when I'm not digging into
so
the
you say
hive.
going in, you're actually putting your hands
So
in there,
I'm
right?
literally, like those upper boxes, there's a outer cover, which is like a plastic roof, basically, for that. You take that off. There's an inner cover, which is like a wooden roof on the inside that has a hole in the middle that vents, and you take that off. And that's just 2 flat boards, basically. After that, you've got this legit, just empty wooden box, but what's inside the box, there's like a little lip on the edges, and it's like if you take picture frames and just put a bunch of picture frames stacked one next to the other. That's what a frame is. But what happens is some of them, they can have what they call foundation, which is like, it's kind of like someone pouring the foundation of your house and then you building on top of it. In this case, it looks like the beginnings of honeycomb. And the bees just literally, they call it drawing it out, but they draw out the beeswax in that same pattern. Now, if you don't have foundation, no biggie. It just means that it's going to take your bees a little bit longer to store their honey because they have to build the foundation themselves out of the beeswax first and then draw it out. So it's literally like foundation is the floor and drawing it out is the walls. So they're going to build out.
That's how you get that honeycomb, I guess?
That's how you get honeycomb. And then when they're done, honeycomb is stocked with nectar and technically like, I don't want to gross anybody out, but like bee saliva.
It's a throw up. It's a saliva throw up.
I mean, it's like a saliva.
Okay.
And so what it is they like get the nectar, they put it in these, I call it the pantry because it's the honeycomb, but they put it in the pantry and then they seal it off, or cap it is the official term. And so if you ever look at the bee videos of me harvesting the hives and stuff, I'll pull a frame out and I'll show you the bees like walking around. I'm like, hey ladies, what's going on? And then I zoom in and I let you see that there's, say for example, they might be like halfway through capping a frame of honey where like half the wall of the honey is actually open. Like it's in there and it's drying out because they use a specific temperature range in their hive to keep their like climate control set. And that's for like the baby bees being brought up in their like little pockets. That's for the honey to be created from the nectar because the nectar has to be dried out to a certain degree and that's how they make the honey. They store pollen and things like that. So they climate control their
That's
hive.
Crazy.
And they can do that by fanning the hive and things. So they actually, in the wintertime, they funnel in and they pack down really tight to keep warm. In the summertime, they fan the hive, so the hives get really noisy.
Oh, yeah? You actually, with all of them?
Oh, yeah, you can hear them. And so in the wintertime, it's like this thing, I always like have anxiety that there's something wrong because I don't open up the hive under a certain temperature, under 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I'll go stand up next to the box and put my ear right up to the hive and listen for the vibrations
you can hear it.
of them fanning and just being in there because they're still buzzing.
Exactly.
And so I'll hear them and I'm like, okay, good job, ladies. Hang in there. It's winter.
So they actually produce their own food? Is that, what did they?
So they harvest their own food. It's like legit, like they work till they die.
What you mean by harvest?
So when a bee is first born, their job is to clean like where they were born at. They clean that up. That's like the first few days. Then their job is to like help clean up the hive in general. That's like the next few days. Then they'll switch, and this is like loosely put, they'll switch and they'll have to start like taking care of the queen for a few days. So like as you age so many days and days and days, like your job and your role changes. Now a middle-aged typical bee that you and I are going to see is a worker bee. Those are always females. You will not see the males so much just walking down the street. And there are male bees. They're called drones, and they're fat. Like you probably, if you
I've
ever
seen
saw
some fat
one,
bees
you were
before.
probably like, oh my gosh, like if it's not a bumblebee, and bumblebees are like, they make the drone bees look dinky. But bumblebees are one thing, but drones are male bees, and they're just fat.
Is that the
fat
difference?
And they're stupid.
They're stupid?
Like, they're idiots. Like, I love them. I really do. I love when the queen has brought in drones, because when she's laying her eggs and she decides she needs to start making more babies, she lays a bunch of drones. And it's actually a different size honeycomb that she has to have the bees make. And she'll communicate to them like, hey, look, we need boys. Make honeycomb for the boys. And so that comb, she'll go ahead and she'll say, okay, I'm going to lay my eggs. But the drones that she's had before, she will mate with. And what happens is the queen actually has like multiple sacs in her body that can store the like drone sperm.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately for the guys, they kind of have a short deal. So when they are drones and they're adults and they're out in the world, when it's time for them to mate with the queen, like they mate and then like they go in the mating zone, which is up in the air at a specific height usually, and the queen will actually leave the hive to go do this. She has her party, they die after they mate with her, and she goes back to the hive. So like procreation only.
Okay.
You're out, guys.
Okay.
In the winter time, same thing, like we don't need them in, so they kick them out.
They kick them out?
They literally kick, like literally they will push a drone bee out the hive.
Wow.
Yeah, they're totally.
So it's mostly what do you call a matriarch? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Bees?
Yeah. Queen rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the lifespan of a
and
queen?
you're like, why does she love this so much?
I'm just amazed. I mean,
so shoot, what are the numbers? So lifespan of a bee, I want to say is around 3 months.
For a queen?
For a queen. Sorry,
Oh.
for a regular bee.
Okay.
I'm not sure on drones.
So the worker bees are the females are 3 months?
I believe it's about 3 months.
Okay.
Now queen is usually like for good years, like 3 years.
Oh.
Like for old 5. But the thing is, if the queen is struggling, if she has a problem, if for some reason she like dies or something, like the hive will raise a queen whenever they feel it's necessary.
Is a queen just a regular female or?
So no. So the thing that makes her a queen, she's actually going to physically be different. But the difference between a regular female bee and a queen bee is what she's fed at a particular point after she's born. So they feed royal jelly to the queen bee. And that's, I mean, I just call it like magic jelly because it makes her into royalty and she turns into the queen bee. I'm not even sure I understand the science of it all when it comes to like, okay, so I feed you some jelly and you turn into like super bee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so why aren't we eating this like all the time?
I want to eat that too.
Yeah, but they will actually form a queen cell is what's called, and it's a bigger cell of wax for her to be raised in because when she's growing, she has to have that space. And so what they do is they lay the egg in there. Well, the queen that's there before lays the egg in there, and the worker bees, because she just goes. The queen is actually, I'll say this,
Pampered,
the queen bee, while she is the heart of the hive, she does not dictate the hive.
Mm-hmm.
So the worker bees, for example, when they want their next queen, they're saying something's wrong, our queen's slow, blah, blah, blah. They'll go ahead and put a queen cell like out in the hive, and it's actually not in the comb like the normal stuff. They have to like put these little, it looks like somebody just dropped an extra bit of beeswax on the side of a frame. But what happens is they make this little like egg cell of beeswax. She goes and she's like, all right, I'm just popping eggs out. She'll pop out so many eggs per minute. Like it's like an obscene
That's her
amount.
job?
Yeah, like that's her job. It's just to lay eggs. Lay eggs and excrete pheromones. Lay eggs, excrete pheromones. Like that's it. She is working.
Okay.
And so when she does that though, she doesn't dictate what they feed the babies. So when they decide we need a new queen, they're like, all right, feed a queen cell over there some royal jelly, and we're going to get a new queen.
Okay.
And so they'll do that, and actually that's usually the only time a queen bee will ever sting. She actually does have a stinger, but the new queen bee may actually sting the old queen out.
Really?
Yeah, so that is a scenario at least.
They have to kick her out somewhere. She's like, I'm not leaving this cushy job.
Sometimes too, it's a lot less aggressive than that. It'll be they raise a new queen bee and she leaves the hive during a swarm and they go start a new hive elsewhere. So like a portion of the bees will leave with that new queen that's raised. So it's not always about like duking it out, competition. But
What happens with like a previous queen, a queen bee?
So she may stay there. If she dies, they'll replace her.
Right.
They'll raise a new one, and it does take actually different times for different things, like drones, worker bees, queen bees. Like they all have different maturity dates from like when the egg is laid, and that's just dependent upon like I guess evolution,
Right.
if you will, like how it takes to progress those insects. But it's really cool because they really like. They manage their little society so
That's what
well.
it is, a society.
And like I said, like when their productivity drops, like they start making plans to like soup it back up. Like, okay, we're gonna
Put
move
it
out.
together.
We're gonna get a new queen. Like, let's get this going.
Yeah.
So I have like tremendous respect for
It
bees
is.
for like getting it done.
Yeah.
So even when they're like much older, the bees that are more likely to sting you are older bees or bees that have been like legitimately threatened. So when I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, they do have aggressive bees. There's
Yeah.
different types of bees. But when you see a bee out when you're walking your dog and it's just like buzzing around some flowers, like it doesn't want anything to do with
Right,
you.
right, right.
That's a worker bee just getting their job done. Like their concern is getting back to the hive with food. And they have their little, I call them their little cargo pants because the back legs of a bee have little pockets in them, and they can pack their pollen that they find in the flowers in their pants.
What do they use the pollen for?
So they eat it.
That's their food.
They eat it, yeah.
That,
they
oh,
eat it. Yeah,
okay,
they
okay.
eat that, and they take in the honey as well.
Okay.
But it's both of those.
Okay.
They produce propolis. They produce beeswax, which is an excretion actually of their bodies, just like we make.
I've seen
earwax.
beeswax in like
Like,
lip balm. I've seen
Yeah, no, totally. It's phenomenal. I love beeswax. But like it's a byproduct of their body. So I always tell people, I'm like, my vegans, I love y'all. I worked at Whole Foods. I was like, but y'all need to be on the bee thing. Like,
For real.
Like
This
I
is-
know y'all don't want to use the beeswax, but if y'all want to keep the bees, we need to like keep a beeswax industry going because you
Okay.
can't take beeswax from bees that aren't there.
So true.
So
That's a big concern. We were losing bees at a pretty good rate, right?
Well, and that was the thing. So I was like learning about that and like what bees do, and I was like, these things are amazing. Like I feel like we should learn from them as a society, and maybe not kick the guys out on the winters, but outside of that, I'm like, I think they've got it pretty well managed.
Yeah.
So but yeah, they've had issues with hive collapse, varroa mites. I did lose a hive my very first year.
What happened?
The second hive that I had to wax moths.
Oh, is it a type of another insect?
And it's a insect. It's a moth that comes in the hive usually late at night. Lays its larva in the hive, and the larva it's like having someone drive an 18-wheeler through your house, and they just destroy the wax. The bees can't manage it. They can't store the food. It's really like someone just ruining your life.
They
And
destroy the wax. The wax is what keeps everything together, or what is
so
what
the
is the wax?
wax is like literally your house. So it stores their food, it stores their babies, it stores everything. There's only wax, and so you're just as a bee, you're crawling from one wax square to another, or a hexagon to another hexagon, and frame to frame.
So it's the frames, and they build their wax on those frames. Okay.
And so when someone comes, in this case a wax moth, and the larva just comes and like chews up the wax
Eats
and
everything.
it's like someone taking all the food and trashing your house and
Okay.
just driving through it back
And
and forth.
the bees have no type of self-defense towards this.
So they can try to sting the actual larva themselves, but no, not really.
Okay.
It's what typically happens is this happens when you have, like in my case, a really, really, really young hive that hasn't really gotten tough enough to take them on. So for example, with like mites and things like that, it's not as much of an issue when you have like hive beetles and things that they can manage if there's enough bees to take it on. But strictly speaking, the bees are really like almost focused on what they need to do. They're not focused entirely, at least, all on like, let's all kill this one thing. So if the percentage of bees that are defending the hive is not great enough for the problem, like the whole hive doesn't just like drop everything and go kill a wax moth. Now
They're so
these moths are in and out.
well-organized.
Was that
I said they're so well organized.
right?
Even though I feel like self-threat or threat should be top priority, but
right, and they do, but it's just, this is one of those situations where it's like David and Goliath, but like David did not see Goliath coming.
Okay.
So like he got hit first,
Yeah.
and that happened to a hive, and I was out of town for like 10 days,
And what?
and wax moths got in the hive when I was gone, because I had checked them right before I left, and they were fine.
And
they got it.
You
and
close it off. When you leave town, you close it off.
It's
and
just it's left the same way. The bees can always get in
Okay,
and out.
okay.
Like always. I reduced the entrance in the wintertime just to make it a little bit more comfortable
Right,
temperature
right.
wise. But here we don't have the harsh winters
Exactly.
like up north where there's like snow all the time and things. So yeah, I left. Some wax moths got in, laid their eggs, and they can destroy a hive in 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
Oh,
Came back and what?
wow.
It was just empty. Like
When I came back, I remember I pulled the frames out, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" And there was like what kind of looked like webbing, like almost like spider webs.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, "This is some weird stuff." But then there was like little specks, and I was like, "This is gross. Like, what is this?" And then I saw one of the larvae, which looks like a caterpillar almost, crawling through the hive, and I was like, "What is that?" Like I freaked out, almost dropped the whole thing. But I was looking at the wax because I was like, the wax is like all like chewed up and messed up and everything. And basically, like I remember, I knew something was wrong immediately, and I wasn't actually familiar with this
the wax moths.
this predator at the time. I'd heard about them, but I hadn't looked them up before, so I didn't even recognize it initially as like, oh, you have wax moths. And so I went and I grabbed my phone, I took pictures of it, and I remember I went on Facebook and messaged a bunch of people in my beekeeping club, and I was like, y'all, what is this? And a few minutes later, people start hitting me back, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you have wax moths. And it was like the diagnosis. I was like, no, my babies. And they're like, there's nothing you can do about it.
At this point.
And just in general, there's usually not anything you can do.
So yeah, once they're in, it's a wrap.
And a lot of times you have to throw away all the equipment too, because they can like damage the wood. They could just wreak
Yeah,
havoc.
it sounds
you know?
18 wheeler, huh?
So I actually ended up, I only threw out a few things. It was small enough hive at the time. I had just gotten this hive. It was small enough hive that it really just, there wasn't a lot of stuff on the hive yet. But yeah, it was like I had them, and I had those bees for like a really short while, and then I left out of town for a few days, came back, and they were destroyed. And I actually was standing with the hive open the day that I saw the last bee fly out, and I like cried.
Okay.
I was just like,
they just evacuate, right?
So a lot of them will die.
They don't have any food.
If they don't have food, some of them will leave. They'll relook. There's different things that can happen. But yeah, when I went back in like a day or two later, and just was like, okay, so what next? And I couldn't even find bees at first. And then one of the last frames I pulled out had a bee on it, and she just flew away. And I was just like,
it's been a good one, but
yeah, and I
I ain't got the rent money this month, dog.
Well, and I told the beekeepers, I was like, what should I have done differently? Like, I feel so bad. Like, my goal is not to like get bees and have them die.
Right.
Or like have the hive fail. And they were like, honey, there's not a lot you can do about that. There's not like a pesticide that you can put in really that's like 100% effective.
Exactly, and safe for them as well.
They're saying like the best thing you can do is just really make sure that the hive thrives. Make sure they've got extra food those first few months that you have them. Make sure that you put an introducer to make it harder for things to get in. Because it's it's like having your garage door open and having to fend it versus having at the front door of your house. Like one's much easier to block than the other. Things like that. So when I got that hive replaced, I was like, all right, introducer for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So and just checking them all the time and making sure they had everything that they needed. And that hive is now actually outdoing my old hive.
Okay.
So I think they're good now.
What was I gonna say? So many questions about this bee stuff.
I was going to say, beekeeping is kind of a thing most people don't have conversations on. So, like, everybody's always like, I know nothing. Tell me everything.
That's what I'm like.
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, all in all, though, like, the beekeeping, I tell people all the time, like, they're like, oh, like, you must really love honey. I was like, honestly, I liked honey more after I got bees, but I didn't get bees for honey.
Okay.
Like, I got the bees because I thought bees were so cool. And then it seemed like the environmentally friendly thing to be like, you should get bees. Like, this, like, is a problem. Like, keep the bees.
Yeah.
So, hashtag save the bees and all. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I said, I just really didn't tell anybody.
Okay.
I did my research and I called people. I drove to Mandeville to go to the beekeeping meeting, which is almost as far as Baton Rouge.
Oh my God!
And you have to drive across like the longest bridge over a lake in the United States.
Oh yeah. Is that going towards Slidell?
Technically, yeah.
Like I know that bridge you're talking about.
Further, like northwest of it. And I had never driven that bad boy by myself, like at night.
Oh my God!
I had driven it during the day and in terrible weather, mind you, but like I had never done it by myself. And I like legit secretly went off and was like, I'm gonna go to a beekeeping meeting.
Okay.
And it was so like I pulled up to like what looked like this garage in the middle of nowhere at night, and I was like, this was such a bad idea.
Yeah, that sounds
And then finally I saw some cars like, pull up. I was like, okay, are you here for beekeeping? And they're like, yes, are you? Because I'm like the only 20-something-year-old in there.
They hit you with the secret handshake, like.
Like that's kind of how I felt. I was like, which door do I go
What's the
in?
password?
Why quit?
Save the bees. But yeah, so I went and I talked, and they were super friendly.
Okay, that's awesome.
I'll admit most of them are like retired, but but they were really nice
That's
people.
awesome.
And so after that, I was like, yeah, I think. And I ended up sitting next to a guy who like just had his first hive like after a year. So he was in that like super newbie
Yeah,
phase.
right.
And
Okay, that's
he's
cool
like,
though.
yeah, I got 5 gallons of honey off the hive. I'm really proud of my ladies.
Yeah.
I was like, really? I was like, that's a lot of honey. And
5
he was
gallons?
like, yeah. And that's honestly, that's about what I get off of each hive, like safely. I always say I can get about 5 gallons off the hive.
Oh, wow.
And then I usually leave whatever extra is there, because even if it's well more than what they need, because my attitude is I'd rather them have their preferred food source and get through winter, get through whatever it is they have to get through on the best food that they need, than for me to try to like feed them sugar syrup or, you know, like substitutes.
Okay.
Like I want them on their diet. So I take usually about 5 gallons of honey from the hive is what I'll harvest.
Okay.
And that translates into about like 50 pounds.
Let me ask you this about the honey. Well, one thing. Is it required of you to take the honey? Like, can
no.
they have two? They can just.
They can keep it. So
Okay.
bees will keep a surplus of honey just because they're over prepared.
I think honey's like it doesn't go bad, right?
Yeah, it's the only food source that does not
Yeah.
ever go bad.
Right.
You could eat prehistoric honey, and as long as like nothing weird else got in it,
Right.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like
It's got antiseptic
Exactly,
qualities.
yeah.
It's the only thing that fosters a moisturized environment, as in like actual moisture being on a cut, that doesn't facilitate bacterial growth.
Yeah, you can.
Dental decay, if you have honey, it's the only sweetener that does not cause additional dental decay, because sugar induces bacterial growth, which
exactly.
induces decay. Honey is antimicrobial or whatever, so like
Right.
it actually doesn't cause additional bacterial growth. So yeah, like I have no like regrets ever, like just being like, I'm just gonna eat some honey, because I'm like,
Okay.
this is not bad for me, this is good for
Yeah.
me.
There's a lot of benefits to honey, definitely.
Tons, and that's just the start.
Right.
So.
What do you do with those? You just storing honey for yourself, or like do you?
So no.
For your business?
So I remember when I first got the bees, maybe even before this, I was like, so if you have the honey, I was like, you're probably gonna have more than what you need. I was like, you're gonna sell it? And I was like, yeah, I guess I'll sell it. I was like, I'll give it to friends. I was like, I know my brother will take some because he's a tea fanatic. But I was like, so what are you gonna call it? And I really thought on that for like a year, because it takes a certain amount of time for your hive to get established. So it wasn't like the first thing I was jumping to. In fact, I was terrified of the first time I had to harvest. But you don't have to harvest the honey. It was just something I wanted to say that I had done.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, have a little bit of my honey.
Yeah.
And so I came up with the name What It Bees Like.
Okay, I saw that. Yeah, sure enough.
I almost had Get Buzzed. It was the next one, but
Get
I thought
Buzzed.
the boozers would get a little too excited.
They would.
So,
You'd be
and
disappointed too.
I'm not a heavy drinker, so I was like, I like a little bit here and there, but this sounds like an alcohol brand. So I always said if I did mead, I would call it Get Buzzed
Okay,
Mead.
sure enough.
But which is alcohol fermented from honey.
Oh, I didn't know that's what mead is.
That's what mead is.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, so one day I'll probably especially if I expand my honey operations, I'll probably keep a hive strictly for meat purposes.
I want to try some mead now.
But
okay,
it takes a lot of honey to produce a smaller amount of beverage. So that's why I haven't done it yet, because I'm like, I just like the honey.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you do the honey, and the big thing with it is that for me, I took the honey out, I harvested it. It's a little bit of a process to get it out.
I believe it.
Hive.
Yeah. You got to smoke them and.
Yeah, you smoke them. You go in there, you pull the frames out. You're trying to brush the bees off. You can crush the comb up and let it drip through sieves into a bucket with a spigot so that you can get the honey out. You can use an extractor, which is a centrifuge kind of thing that you put the frames in after you've uncapped. We talked about capping the honey at the end. It's like closing the door on a jar of something. And so you uncap it by just scraping off that little bit of wax. And the centrifuge spins out the honey out of the frames, and it sinks to the bottom of this bucket that has a spigot on it. And again, you pour it into a container or something. But I had so much honey after doing the first harvest that I was like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna sell this. So I had ordered jars and containers and things like that, and I labeled it What It Bees Like, and I'm a graphic designer, so it wasn't hard for me to do my branding. And then just started bottling it. I put it as a sub-company of Shae Shae.
Okay, yeah.
And the first year I just did the honey, nothing else, and I think I sold out in a week.
Okay, that's awesome.
Just the whole thing. And I kept some for myself, and I kept a little back stock just in case I misgauged it, and some for relatives and things that I wanted to send stuff to. But yeah, I sold out in a week.
That's awesome.
The second year I sold out in a week. The third year, It was like a week and a half. I think this is about my 4th year now
Okay.
with them. And I have 2 really, well-established hives at this point. So I really got a good bit because one of the years I know I had just the 1 hive right after that
Right.
incident with the collapse. And so this year, actually, I'm happy to say I actually still have a little bit left. I have 2 cases left of honey, of the what it bees like and the smaller container size. But I've changed the sizes of the containers and things like that to kind of figure out what people like.
Yeah.
And I also, this past year, the wax that's left over after you've pulled all this honey out of it, it's like, what do you do with that? I'm like, I've got a list of things I can do with that.
Is that beeswax or something
So
different?
beeswax,
Okay.
yeah. And so what I do is I warm it and melt it down, and they call it impurities, but basically like the bits of particles and pollen and things like that that are in it will actually sink to the bottom of the wax when it's liquid, because it's heavier than the wax itself. And as it cools, you get what actually looks like ground beef on the bottom of these giant discs of yellow wax. But you scrape that off, and that's really just the pollen and things like that that's been browning from the temperature of it being boiled. And so you boil that in water, though, and you get these like giant discs of wax. And so what I actually do is I take that, I break it up into chunks, and I melt that in with like coconut oil and shea butter, because my business is shea butter based.
Yeah.
And so if you ever go on the ShaeShae.com website, there is the What It Bees Like line. And this past year we did the jumbo lip balms, which I was really excited about.
Jumbo, like big lip balms?
So they're like supersized lip balms. I love them. They're so much fun because
So
they're
is
so
it like,
obnoxious.
what is jumbo like? Am I like?
So they're like, I think they're like 2.5, almost 3 times maybe the size of a standard lip balm.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, like it's just to last longer and it's a fun size
Yeah,
for a lip
that's
balm.
awesome.
But it makes it a little bit less difficult to lose.
Sure enough.
Or excuse me, more difficult to lose. And less difficult to use in general, because it's I mean, you could use it on your body even. It's like big enough, but yeah, it has the local beeswax from my hives in it with the shea butter and
That's
the
awesome.
coconut oil. And it's got the info on the bees and all that, harvested in Gentilly, New Orleans.
That's so cool. So hold on, just in case anyone wants to buy any beeswax or honey, can they buy honey from you as well?
Yeah, they totally can.
Yeah, please plug it.
If you go online, ShaeShae.com, it's spelled a little funny. It's ShaeShea.com, and check out the What It Bees Like line. There's honey under there. There's the jumbo lip balms, which is made with the local beeswax. And additionally, coming soon, we'll be having beeswax candles as well.
Okay.
So I already feature soy wax candles on the site, and now we will have beeswax candles as
That's
well.
so awesome.
And by the end of spring, one other early plug, there's going to be specialty soap that's going to be honey scented and infused with some beeswax and honey.
Okay.
How good your skin gotta feel.
Right. So I'm really excited about that. Those are some projects I've been wanting to do, but now that I've really established the hives, they're situated. They're putting in the work. So.
Okay. That's awesome. When I finish editing this and publish it, I'm gonna put all your links down below, so I got you on that. But that's really cool. We definitely got off on a tangent on bees and whatnot.
Oh my God, I'm amazed.
Well, take it as your own information. Your bonus. Lagniappe, as they say around here.
I want to talk to you about, I guess, dance coordinator Sergio.
Okay.
So you met Sergio at a festival, I believe.
So yeah, I randomly met him. Him and his girlfriend were at Gretna Fest, and this was, like I said, a few years before I ever got into dancing. And they stopped by their booth, and I know she was like, "Oh, there's all this fun stuff in here," and so she was just getting excited to shop for the Shae Shae products. And anyway, he and I ended up kind of talking in some kind of way. I mentioned, I was like, yeah, I like doing this, and I like dancing, blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, oh, you like dancing? And I was like, yeah, totally. And I mentioned like Zumba and things like that. He was like, if you ever want to learn a social dance, he's like, here's my card, blah, blah, blah. Like, I teach over at Dance Court. And I was like, oh, cool, thanks, man. And so I had the card. I went home, stuck the card in my little container of my business cards. And then for like 2 years, I sat on that bad boy. And I was just like, oh, yeah, I need to go dancing. But I was new job, new house, bees, like everything under the sun was going on. And so finally, when I kind of settled down a little bit more, I was like, I want to go out and be social again.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was in April, that same week that I had that thought, one of my friends messaged me and was like, hey girl, I'm in Baton Rouge, and I was going to go to New Orleans like this weekend to go to this, and it was Jana Blake's was doing a ladies styling class. And she's from Mambo, Orleans. and I
Is that the-
love her to this day. She's a phenomenal dancer.
Sounds familiar.
But so Raymond and
Oh,
Janet
bingo.
teach.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So they teach on
Bingo.
Wednesdays, and they do on 2 dancing here in New Orleans.
Yeah, we've had them on the show.
Yeah, and so she was doing a quick little workshop on lady styling, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go so bad. That sounds so cool. I was like, but I have a festival to go to. And so when I went to that festival, which was the Fret Fest in April, it's always like the first weekend or whatever, I go to this Fret Festival, and I met this other guy. And he's actually, I think he just moved out of New Orleans area, but he was like talking to me about the product. And he was like, yeah, we got to support our businesses here. You know, local is awesome. We need to make sure that always stays. So he was like saying all these things, and he was like, yeah, man, what else are you into? And I was like, oh, I like to dance. And he was like, really? You should go to dance court. I take classes over there. And I was like, I think that's the place that my friend was inviting me to, you know? And so at that point, that was when I went home and was like, find that business card.
Okay.
And so when I found it, I was like, it is Dance Quarter. And I went on their website, and actually the first class I ever subscribed to was actually Rubia Garcia's class. Which is funny because she's so prevalent on social media now that I'm like, how did you not know this chick before that point? Like, she's awesome.
You're trying to get her on.
But yeah, so I saw her classes listed, and I saw Sergio's name listed for the Bayou Movimiento social on Thursdays, the Salsa Bayou social. And so I was like, all right, she's got a beginner class right before that. I was like, I'm gonna sign up for that. I was like, I'm gonna ask him like about the classes once I get there, and maybe he can tell me like what else there is, and like, you know, when he teaches, because I didn't have his info just at that time for the classes. And so like I signed up, and I went to her class. I remember I was so nervous.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I went by myself. Like, this was really kind of me, I guess, like growing up on my own, if you will, like making myself go out in the world and not just stay locked up in my house making soap, you know? So, I mean, it's me, the bees, there's a cat lady, and there's like the bee lady, right? And needless to say, I have 3 pets in my house. Yeah. So I've got my own little world there.
You definitely do.
But yeah, so I went, I took the class. It was so much fun. I was like, okay, like, I don't think I was like horrible, but I'm still like gonna learn. And I've been a dancer my whole life, so dance classes are a natural environment for me. Right. But I'm not used to, not to sound cocky, I'm not used to being the person who struggles in a dance class because I was always trained so much. It was just a matter of like, okay, what else do we want to know? Like, I was used to the work, and I was used to like a certain level of progression. And so I had no idea what my progression was going to be when I got into Latin dancing, because it's like truly like social dancing. I was like, this is so different. And you have a partner. I was like, there's like dudes and, you know, ladies. And I was like, ah. So yeah, I took her class. And then right after that, like, he walked in the room, I remember, and like hopped up in the DJ booth and was like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have our shines class and blah, 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 you know, like gave a little spiel and all that. And then I remember I went up to, I was like, hey, I'm Shae. I don't know if you remember me, but I met you at Grand Fest like 2 years ago, and you gave me your card, and it like took him a second, and then he was like, Shae Shae, you're the Shae Shae girl. And
he has an amazing memory.
Like, he's really good with names. Like, I suck at names. I'll tell you that now. I'm so bad at names. I'm really good with faces. So I recognized him immediately when we walked in, but I'm terrible at names. So he's good with names. I'm good with faces.
Hey,
and I feel like, you know, it's a good combo. But yeah, I was like, yeah, that's me. And he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, that was like 2 years ago. Like, what have you been up to? And I was like, not dancing, apparently.
Okay, right.
But I'm here. And so, and I legit had his card. I was like, I still have your card. He was like, you still have my card? I was like, I'm in graphic design. I still have your card.
Hey.
And so, yeah, so he told me, he was like, yeah, classes start next week. It was like good timing for everything. So I went, and I think like within a 2-week span, I signed up for like 3 classes.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, which was a little bit overkill, but that's kind of my style. I'm like, if I'm gonna go for something, I usually go for it. So yeah, I signed up for Rubia's classes. I signed up for classes with him, and then he was teaching salsa, and then he was also teaching bachata. So I did both of those, and at that time I didn't even know what bachata was. I was just like, what? So I stayed. He was like, well, just stay and see if you like it. It's all levels. I was like, all right, cool. So I stayed for that, and then like I said, I think that week I went to the social that night, and then the next week I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to that dance thing again, the social. And I was like, didn't know anybody, was so nervous. And thankfully, like, it really does help when your friends from class go, because you know them, you get to know them, you like, y'all are in the same boat, like we know like 2 weeks worth of information, you know. And so I stayed, and you know, everybody was really nice and friendly. And so eventually I was like, all right, this is okay. And I remember I think after maybe the second week I started seeing Kizomba, and I was like, what is that? And I was like, it's really different from the others. I was like, but the music good. You remember what I said about that music? I was like, yeah. And so at the time, Peter was teaching Kizomba classes. And so I was like, yeah, like, what is this? And so he was just like, talk to Peter. And so, and he knew Kizomba, he had taught it before and things like that. But Peter was like, who was really putting in the extra classes and stuff. So he's like, no, like, go talk to him. Like, he can tell you everything you probably want to know about it. And I was like, all right. So Peter, super nice guy, and he was like, "Yeah, man, like come to Kizomba class.
Hey,
like
that sounds
we'll
like
grab
Peter.
a drink after. We'll discuss any questions you have. Like the class likes to hang out afterwards because his class is not just like class. His class is like a social life that you can add on if you want. Like it's not just like okay, class is over, bye, I never
exactly.
see
it's not
you
like
again.
that. Yeah.
So yes, I went to classes and I was like, this is so scary because like even to this day, like my Kizomba is like the thing that I think I've put the total actual like time into the least, comparatively speaking, because I've just done performances in salsa, I've done performances in bachata and things like that. So I've had to put the extra hours into those. So Kizomba is like the thing that I love, but that like I will be the most humble about it. Be like, nah, dude, like you the pro, you the like, hey lady, like you know how to move. I'm just trying to get through the dance.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's where I'm at. I love it. Don't get me wrong. And I probably listen to Kizomba music more than anything else actually in my car. Like that's the funny part. But it's the one that I'm always just like, just trying to learn. Just really want to learn.
I mean, that's a great mentality to have though.
So, and I mean, in general, like you always should be learning. Like you should never stop. But that's definitely the thing that always keeps me in check. Is that world, because there's just so much to learn about, and there's so many tangent dances that I feel like are kind of related to it with Zumba and things like that.
So you were taking classes with Sergio at one point, and then you somehow slowly transitioned into teaching as well, or
that wasn't planned. It just with time things change, things sort out and move around, and so I joined the team for a time and we did performance and that kind of thing, and I kind of came in a little bit late actually because they had already started training for the performance that I ended up learning, and because we went to like Danza and things like that, which is the big dance event in December. And so I saw the routine, and then I remember like they had a spot open up and they were like, hey, we need an extra follow, you want to like join in? And I was like, what? And so I legit, like, I had my audition and I was terrified, and I won't give spoilers on auditions, but as I went through and I did my thing, and I will say they wanted me to test the choreography for that routine at the time because that's what they were training for. They were like, we've got this dance, we would like you to be a part of it. How do you feel about it? And so they actually like crash course gave me like, 2 minutes or whatever of choreography that they showed me, and I had 30 minutes to learn it. And then I had to do it. And I was just like, okay, thank God I trained for this. Like with all my ballet stuff, I was used to that. I was like, okay, I can do this. And it wasn't like high stress or anything, but me being the like super, super overkill dancer that I've been my whole life, I was like, no, like you have to nail this. Like you have to get this right. And so I did it, and they were like, yeah, like she's up to par. So I was like, I am? Okay, like I can make it? Like y'all will take me? And they were like, yeah, we'll take you. I was like, thanks. So I managed to join the team, and just with that, like that was just extra training, extra time, and that just really helped. I was going to tons of classes at that point, just making sure that I was at every single one, the beginner class, the intermediate class, the bachata class. Like I didn't skip classes. I've probably not skipped more than like 5 classes in 3+ years. That's or whatever. Awesome. Like in general, like I had 1 or 2 sessions of like switching out stuff. And I've only ever like not been in a session like once, but I've almost essentially stayed in classes for years straight at this point. Awesome. And I still believe in classes. Like if I'm not taking a class in one thing, like if you don't see me somewhere, it's just because I'm somewhere else doing something else. Like that's just me.
Is that everyone? But I understand what you're saying. I get you.
So like I said, when I signed up the first week, I signed up for like 3 classes.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so if I'm not doing one thing, I'm doing another. But yeah, so I did those classes and I trained, and then eventually, as different people have different opportunities. Some of the dancers on the team actually started teaching, things like that. So they started doing their own things and starting like Tina started the Zouk scene really here.
She's big in that.
I call it the Zouk queen, but
for New Orleans definitely.
Right.
Hell yeah.
And so she started doing stuff like that, and so there was just like more of a need for that extra follow, and then that's just kind of how things fell in place. And by that point, I don't even know how many times I had taken the fundamentals class, the intermediate class, like
That's gonna make you excellent though.
It just
staying with those basic classes and everything.
well, the foundational things are just
as important.
They're equally as important. Like if you're gonna be, not even if you're gonna be an instructor, if you just expect to be a good dancer, you cannot disregard the foundation.
So true.
You just can't.
So true.
Like you may not think about it all the time, but it's what built what you're doing.
Of course.
So so I always tell people, I'm like, I get it. Sometimes you don't want to go back to basics, but your basics are what makes you what you are.
At what point in a social dance are you not using your basic?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so that's huge. But and it's just for me, it was always really nice to see the people come in because I still very vividly remember being a beginner in that world because I was, an adult. So if you had said being a beginner in ballet or something, I'd be like, that was like how many years ago?
Right.
But like I don't remember any anxiety when I started ballet because I was 3, But I can tell you how nervous I was stepping onto a social dance floor, for a Latin social, stepping into a beginner salsa class. Like
I think that's what that kind of makes you a great teacher because you're empathetic to that point, that position.
I certainly hope so because I'm definitely empathetic to the cause.
Yeah. Because you
I still remember.
can relate to it. You can relate to it easy.
Well, and I think that's the thing. Like everybody kind of goes to that intimidation factor of just like, you want to have a good time. Like you want it to be worth your while. Like you don't want to be the person that's causing an issue, but you just don't know what to expect. And we fear what we don't know.
Right.
So I think now I'm a little less anxious when I go to stuff, but people still laugh at me because I'm like, I'm still nervous to go to like congresses and things like that sometimes. They're like, what? They're like, you're an instructor? I'm like, first off, I only recently started even using that term because, again, I fell into dance instruction. Like, in this case, there was a need. I knew what needed to be covered, and it was good timing, honestly. But yeah, like, I definitely, there will always be somebody who is learning who knows less than you. There will always be somebody who is progressing, who is past you.
Right, sure enough.
You can't always be worried about being the best. You can't always fret about being the worst.
Right.
It's a constant cycle.
Of
And
course.
so, like,
yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, no, like, I don't mind being stressed out to a degree when I go to congresses because I don't want to be that jerk that goes on the floor and is like, yeah, look at me. I know what I'm doing. Like, no, like, I'm going to go and I'm going to, like, dance with my partner. I'm going to feel out what they're doing and I'm going to try to match them as best I can. Now, it's just, you never know what level they're going to be. They don't know what level you're going to be, but like that's your job as a social dancer is to get on the same page.
I was as far as like that mentality of being a jerk, I say that Congress is the one place that'll humble you because you'll see
real quick.
Yeah, you'll see the talent level. You'll be like, okay, I thought I was good.
Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is not class.
You see that talent level, like, okay, I thought I was good.
And I think it's super intimidating. Like I said, to this day,
it can be definitely.
I've gotten better about being like, go out on the floor, like you know what you need to know to dance, like you know your foundations, but. Even then, you want the person that you're dancing with to enjoy it as much as you do.
That's
and
the
I
whole
think
goal.
That's really the stress at this point that I have to tell myself, like, just go have fun. And I've found over the years that, like, if there's anything that I can say that has actually directly been told to me, and I've said this is the best compliment I've ever gotten. A beginner told me one time, actually at my birthday last year, that's the first time I heard this comment, and he said, you just look like you enjoyed dancing with me so much, and it just made me feel so comfortable. And I like legit almost like cried on us, but like I'm about to get emotional about it now. But I just was like, that was the best compliment that anybody has ever given me about my dancing because it made me feel good about being on the floor with that person. So, and I feel like that should just always be the goal, like to have fun, to be comfortable with each other, and make it a good dance.
That's so true. I definitely agree with that. I think both parties are like trying to make sure the other party enjoys the dance.
Yeah, I mean, what wrong can could there be? So.
That's awesome. I love that. Definitely. I mean, yeah.
And that's the thing. I think too. There's like that stipulation of like, is it fun to dance with the beginner? And the beginners feel a lot of guilt about that. And I can say without even breaking a sweat, like, oh, I love dancing with beginners.
Okay.
Like, I love dancing with everybody, but for the same reason. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I've had dances where, like, legit, all we did was basic, but, like, they were so into that basic. I was just like, okay. And, like, just had a good time. Like, syncing up with a person on the social floor, it's more than just the dance steps. Like, it's like getting to know a person.
Oh, so
you don't
true.
have to have the words, but that connection, dance connection is what makes it feel good.
Yeah, so true.
And you don't have to be doing crazy stuff to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. I look at dancing as like cardio, fitness. I love the endorphins from it. Like, I love just like getting a good sweat out of it from doing crazy stuff. But I appreciate a basic dance. Like, boy, do I ever. And you can't do all of them all the time. Like, you know, that variety is important.
That's what's so important. Yeah.
So I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I was like, you see me dancing something crazy? I was like, you got some basic skills? Let's have at it. Like, I'm totally for it.
Okay, yeah, I think you're doing like crazy stuff all night. It's probably good.
Oh my God, it's tiring. I mean, it's great.
It's
tiring.
Even if you're not tired, like just enjoy the song.
Okay,
You know, just take it down a notch. You know, you can't live at full throttle all the time.
Sure
It's not what it is. So
nah, that makes a lot of sense.
It takes good to have bad. I think you appreciate the good and the bad with all of it. The music, the slower songs, the faster songs, right? There's pros and cons to each bit of it. And so being a beginner, I don't look at it as a negative. I just look at it as a different variable.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious for people out there who might have that jerk mentality, you know, who like I don't like dancing with beginners. Is there any advice you can say to them, or like, you know, you think you know what that stems from? Like,
well, first and foremost, I tell them you're missing out.
Okay.
You really are. I think life has a way of biting you in the butt when you do something like that.
Okay.
I think, you know, people, your friends say, for example, that you get from these environments, like, you're going to get less of them if that's how, you know, you come off to people. And that's unfortunate, but that's just life in general. It doesn't have to be on the social floor, you know. But even so, I just think with anything that you do, you know, if you're going to have that mentality, you're going to get a certain amount of feedback from it that's good. You're going to get a certain amount of feedback from it that's bad. And you've got to take your good with your bad.
Sure enough.
So, I mean, I don't get into people's business to check them, if you want to call it that. But I think it speaks for itself, you as a person, like how you handle your business. And if that's how you handle yourself on the dance floor, then the people that want to flock to you will flock to you. The people that don't, they won't. So, you know, and you leave people to make their own choices.
Yeah, you kind of attract that energy.
So yeah, you know, and personally, I would like to think I have good vibes, and that hopefully I attract good vibes. But I mean, if I'm not, then I guess I'll be upset about it, and I'll have to do some self-evaluation.
Yeah, sure enough.
So I think, you know, society kind of has a way of working things through. Maybe not as fast as we would all like it, but just over time.
Sure enough. I say, you know, I've always enjoyed dancing with you. Say you're a great father. I enjoy dancing with Francesca as well. She's a great father.
I was gonna say what?
It's a privilege to have you with two of my favorite fathers in the same room right now. But it just shows, you know, the hard work that you both have put in, you know, trying to get better.
You definitely got some skills. You should, you know, make sure you plug that a little bit more up here. I'll be, just mention me. Yeah, girl, you got it going on over there. Don't be quiet.
She always try to be like this little modest, but
ain't that the truth?
Don't fall for it.
Catch me on the dance floor. No, you're amazing. Like, I remember, I don't know how long ago this was, but I took a class and you were teaching at Visario. And I was like, y'all, this is too much. I don't know what she's doing. Like, how is it that she could turn and land on that line? Like, it was amazing. I was mind blown. And she was like, we're just having a good time. Like, effortlessly doing these things. And I'm like, oh my God, you were amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're on the dance floor all the time. You're extremely talented.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an obsession, I guess.
Of course. I
It shows.
I definitely understand that.
There's actually some stuff coming up. Since we're talking about dancing and speakers, there is a new salsa beginner class that is coming out on Mondays at the Rhythmic Arts Center, which I'm really excited about because I like getting people in the community. I think.
Is this Julia and or something different?
So this is just gonna be me.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
I know it just got released. I don't even know if y'all seen it yet.
Can you say the date?
Yeah, so May 13th is the first day. It's gonna be a 7-week series this go round. It's gonna be at the Rhythmic Arts Center at 6:30 to 7:30. You can sign up at noladancing.com. Okay. And so that's going to be a salsa beginner class, which I'm really excited. I'm actually hoping that some of my ladies from like Zumba and things like that, and even some of the guys, they love the Latin music music, and like I've told them before, like y'all know salsa basic. If you take Zumba with me and I play a salsa song, I go through all the things that we're talking about for these classes. So I tell them all the time, like, y'all know how to social dance, you just don't have a person in front of you. Same thing with bachata and things like that. I tell them all the time, like, that's what's in our class. Like, I teach y'all what is actual stuff from these classes. So so they know it and they don't even realize it. But so I'm probably gonna have some of them come out and different people. Right now, there is no salsa class for beginners at the RAC on several days of the week, actually. So I'm hoping to kind of fill a void, just in general, for NOLA dancing for Mondays for people who maybe can't get to the other days of classes. So that was set up.
When is Julie's class, though?
So she has a...
Is that Tuesdays
So there's a beginner salsa class that just started. I think that's the one that
Julie
you're talking
and
about. Renato. And that's on Friday.
Oh, okay.
And so I actually thought it was going to be on Monday. So
That's
I actually
what I thought
waited because I was like, I hope they do it on Mondays right before. And then you can have like the twofer, beginner and intermediate. They actually put it on Fridays before their social so that the people can practice at the social, which is really smart now that I was like, oh, well, that makes sense because you got the social. So, so I looked at the schedule and I was like, okay, like where's there a gap? Because that was what was originally discussed. Was like, hey, Shae, like you want to do a beginner class? And I was like, maybe. And so I was like, well, when would it not overlap?
Right.
There's no point
That's
in
the biggest
redundancy.
Deal.
Yeah, and it's I mean, we have so many classes now. It's a blessing, but then you don't want to mess anything up. So I told him, the studio manager, I was like, look, I've been studying the schedule. I've been looking at classes. I'm trying not to like overlap on anything. Like this needs to be an asset, not a hindrance.
Right.
And so Monday, I was like, there's like no beginner class on Monday, so we did Mondays. But that was the original pitch because that was originally what was like mentioned and brought up. But I told her, I was like, hey, I know you're inviting me to like teach and stuff, but I actually have some ideas for a different class if you want to hear them. I was like, because I actually pitched the beginner class to a duet. I was like, I'm assuming you want two people to do this. And so I was like, but I have this idea that I've been sitting on for a really long time now. And I kind of was able to test drive it with the dance teams and stuff like that, with training with them. And it just was something that came up to me that I really felt was like a need that nobody had like fully addressed, if you will. And that was the dancers boot camp class. So the idea for that, I'm super excited about this class. The idea from that was that we have some people who take classes. We have some people who are on dance teams. We have like those random people who pop in and out. There's an assortment of situations when it comes to dancing. But I think for anybody that kind of wants to linger in this, the society of dance in general, they want to be comfortable. And sometimes that's not just about going to a dance class and learning what the steps are. Sometimes learning what those steps are is cool, you get that information, but there's other things that you either want to use as a prerequisite to help it make it feel more comfortable, or to increase, what you're doing, and you still need to kind of train a little bit past what the class is going to offer. So with that, I was like, not everybody necessarily wants to perform, but understandably, if you're on a team, that's usually kind of the push is to to perform and to really showcase what you've been working on, and that makes perfect sense. And some people I think have even started maybe more recently trying to do the concept of like on a team in general, but like maybe not for like major performances and stuff, more low key. But I just felt like there was this void of people who want to improve, but they need stuff that's not just about let's practice this.
Thank you, Shae. I'm one of those people. I feel like, like I feel like, and I hate to interrupt you.
No, go. Like this is good feedback. This is intel.
This is how I feel. I feel like New Orleans the dance community has grown so much. Compared to what it was a few years ago. And we have all these classes that overlap, but it's like we have beginner classes, we have intermediate classes, but those people want to keep on growing, right? Like you don't want to stop there. It's like, where do we go? What do we do?
Yeah. And a lot of that, I think, is there's exercises and things like that you can take the same content from a class and you can train a person to be body, where you can train a person to have rhythm, as they say. You can train a person to just be in quote unquote better shape to do that dance move. And what I tell people all the time, because like I had somebody ask me this like 2 weeks ago, she was like, I really love your style for your dancing. And I was like, thank you, like that's really sweet. And she's like, are you going to teach like a styling class? And I was like, well, I know there's a couple that pop up from time to time. We tend to do them in this area as more like a pop-up than a course. But I said, but the real thing that I would tell you about, especially lady styling as a follow and things like that, I said, it's about what makes you feel comfortable.
Right.
I said, it's knowing that opportunity of when you can do something and then picking something that you feel good doing. I said, so styling, and I think everybody agrees styling should be unique to you, but how do you get comfortable enough to style to do what is you? And so when you're talking about the dance moves themselves, when you're talking about the styling, all those different things have a knowledge component, but they also have a physical component and a comfort component. And this class, this Dancers Boot Camp class, is designed for anybody in general who wants to take an active class, but also for anybody that's especially social dancing or doing forms of dance that wants to get more in touch with their body. So this class is going to focus on everything from cardio to toning to flexibility. We're going to do styling, focusing on like what types of things, what movements help you to get more comfortable with using your arms and your limbs and things like that. We're going to focus on footwork and things like that. We'll do some quick choreo trainings to kind of get you in the mindset of that quick short term, like learning
It should be
choreography.
like a weekender.
And it's going to touch on a lot of different things. And one of my favorite topics that I think I get a lot of questions about, which is spin technique.
Oh, yes.
And so these are things, and these are applicable to all forms of
course.
dance. Like this is not strictly
That
about
technique.
just being on the Latin dance floor. But it's just something that I just really felt like there was a hole.
There is a hole.
And that it needed to be filled. So a portion of the class will be always dedicated to cardio, toning, and things like that to get you more comfortable physically for doing this dance. Because a lot of us have desk jobs, myself included.
Sure enough.
Like I use these classes, I tell people all the time, like I'm here to sweat.
Sure enough.
So I'll have that component so that people are actually physically improving their health a little bit more and being more active. But we're going to have exercises and drills, everything from stuff that I learned from classical ballet classes and things like that with spin technique, teaching people how to feel the muscle memory of how to spot when they turn, whether it be one turn, whether it be 10 turns. We'll be doing, like I said, footwork and things like that. But I want to get people that extra time that you don't get in a class, in a course, because they're trying to teach you the curriculum.
Yeah.
But that maybe you're not going to join a team to hopefully squeeze in. And even then, I mean, I'll say it, these team instructors have a lot on their plate.
Yeah.
Like they're performing, they're teaching choreography. I'm sure they're trying to train their team as well.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to keep up
It
with.
is.
So I'm really hoping this class ends up being an asset, not only to just the dance community as far as like an extra class to take, but to the teachers of all these other classes, that this will be something that can help that student go in their class, learn the curriculum, and learn it faster, learn it better, be more comfortable with it, because they are body aware. They've gotten used to a certain range of motion that's now expanded, things like that. So that's the focus of the class. It's going to be active, but it's also going to be informative.
That's really cool.
Do we have a date for that particular class?
Yes.
Okay,
So
so
Dancers Boot Camp is going to start on May 15th, which is a Wednesday.
That is coming up.
It is. It is coming up, and it is from 6 to 7 at Dance Quarter.
Okay.
And it is also a 7-week series as well.
Oh, so it's a standard boot
So
camp.
the thing that's going to be really nice about it is that this is not going to be a cumulative class. And I want to keep it that way because kind of like with the regular classes, after the first week or two, you can't drop in because you need to know the basics.
Right.
This is a fitness and information class for dancers to train. And for anybody else that just wants to train on these same topics. And I want it to be something that if, for that person who say maybe can't join a team because they can't do the time commitment, maybe you can make 4 out of the 7. Maybe you can make 2 out of the 7. Like, okay, you can only show up once here and there. You just don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah.
But I want to keep this class going as an asset to train as your schedule allows. And who knows, maybe it'll grow, I don't know. But at least for now, to keep that to where it's drop-in friendly for the entirety of the series.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that class.
Thank you.
I think we need that class.
I'm really excited about it. So I've been, like I said, I've been sitting on this idea for a really long time, and things are aligning, and I was like, all right, we're gonna go for it.
Awesome.
That's the best way to do it. Definitely, just take that chance. And you're giving value, so I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can't go wrong with giving value.
Hopefully not.
I'm positive you can't.
No. I think a lot of people are eager to learn, to keep growing, and just going back to what I said, I think like I see what you mean. Like we go to the class, we go to the social, but there's something in between. We get on stage and stuff like that, but there's something in between that is missing, which is what you're given, right? Like those people that are not necessarily past the beginner stage, but that are taking intermediate classes, maybe advanced classes. You want to have that time to center yourself again and learn just other things, right? and explore and expand.
Definitely. And everybody's at different levels too with like body awareness and body movement, and not all of us are dancing, you know, when we're not in classes and stuff like that, right? So like there's just some stuff that people just aren't used to. They get, you know, a new move in class and they're like, my arm has never moved this way in my life. Well, we need to train. We need to get your arm to move. We need to, you know, expand that range of motion. Like it's training, and it's not meant to be like
physical therapist right now.
Yeah, right. It's not meant to be aggressive, but I mean, it is meant to help expand on people's dancing. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great idea. I wanna, you know, I guess, thank you for taking time to talk to us, Shae.
Thank you.
Of course. Real quick, please, let people know, how can they get in contact with you?
Usually I would say texting and email is probably the easiest, but I am on social media. Shae, SHAE, Thomas on Facebook.
Okay.
My handles for my pages for Instagram and social media and things like that are Shae Shae Online, which is SHAE SHEA Online ONLINE. Additionally, you can see a lot of my stuff even on YouTube and things like that with those same handles. ShaeShae.com, like we were mentioning before, has a contact me page as well. And legit, like send me an email, Shae, SHAE, T as in Thomas, 08 at gmail.com. Hit me up and yeah, let me know what you got.
Hey, sure know. Any last words, Nama?
Thank you. Just again, thank you. I'm excited for this class. I'm excited. I think that the dance community, like I said, in New Orleans is growing. It's missing a lot of things, in my personal opinion. But we also need that for those dancers that leave here and want to keep growing, want to keep advancing, want to keep developing those skills, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited for that and your Monday class. But definitely that boot camp. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Of course.
I'm super excited to have gotten to talk to you guys.
Hey,
so.
sure enough. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed learning about the bees.
It's not just that. It's like there's a whole bee segment in here.
I did, yeah, there is. Honestly, that was probably the most interesting part, so I really appreciate that.
Consider it my lanyard.
Oh, yeah. You're the best. So I don't think I told you. We have this ritual at the end of the show. We like to dance with our guests.
So I heard about this.
Okay.
Oh wow!
Because I've been like trying to like catch up on the podcast, and I was like, okay, I heard you mention. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's like there's dancing. I was like, this is a full package.
So definitely, I guess we'll let you choose because you know you're so advanced and various. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
As far as what style you want to pick.
Oh goodness. I like them all.
Of course. I mean,
people ask me all the time, they're like, what's your favorite style? I'm like, I don't know.
That's
like,
a
what
different
song
question.
are you going to play? Like,
right. Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah.
Well,
I won't put you on the spot. We have time to think about this.
Well, I would say more than anything, like, if you're leading, what do you feel the most comfortable leading?
I was going to say,
because that's usually what I prefer. I prefer my lead to be happy. So.
Sure enough, okay.
If you're happy, I'm happy.
Do you know how to lead at all?
So I do lead.
Then perfect. Well, me and you can switch up with Francesca.
Oh my goodness.
That's the best idea.
I primarily lead salsa. Okay, I'm still learning the rest.
Then we'll do a salsa. Then is that okay?
Yes, I'll do my best to follow.
Hey, that's
I'll
perfect.
do my best to lead.
That's perfect.
I'm primarily trained as a follow.
Hey, I understand.
Disclaimer there.
That's no worries. So we'll do a salsa song then.
Okay.
But I think I'm gonna wrap this episode up of the Two Left Feet podcast.
Yeah.
I wanna thank you all. I wanna thank you, Shae. Thank you, Francesca, and thank you all for watching. Hey, I think that's it.
And then he puts you first. Is it better with my face? Like this? Okay. I don't think so either. All right.
Estoy muy lejos de ti y tú en La Habana bailando para poder olvidar cómo
Let me get it, Shae. Let me get it.
Oh. Hey.
Hold on, yeah.
I didn't know you wanted to flip it. I don't know what's coming on this one, but yeah.
Oh,
I'm so just I was like, I was just when I Zumba class one day, they were like, what?
Ay, mire, vea, si las mujeres son lindas y hermosas, aquí no hay fea, para que vea. Mi cari se está bailando para su fiesta más popular. Buscan a un salvador y en la baila hasta amanecer. Habla corrida de todos los tipos y la noche fiesta y rumba. En Calimidad se sabe gozar. En Calimidad se sabe gozar. Tenía su solamente hacen que mi Cali se caliente. De noche sus calles valoritos se ven bonitas. Afinen bien las orquestas que este año sin vamos a reventar. La rumba empezó en la cresta, vamos a Guajito esa remata. Con salsa de aquí, con mucho maní. Con salsa de aquí, con mucho maní. Juanita, mire, vea, véngase a Cali para que vea. Juanita, mire, vea, goce la feria para que vea. Si usted va llegando, váyase tomando, que de bailando ella se va acomodando. Tenía la plata corrida de todos, que no tenga cena sin ningún castigo. Juanita, mire, vea, véngase a Cali para que vea. Si vos la mantito la cansa vomito, si va a mi obrero se vuelve número. Si se la calora, no mire
Bien,
nada.
Lalo. Alright, so check it out.
Oh, Lord.
Check it out. I'm trying.
Okay.
Come on in. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Why
Hey. Now let me try the trick again.
Okay.
Alright.
Follow you. Oh, no. Come on, what? I gotta stop?
That's the
Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me. I'm not gonna do this. I need spot mode. I can do this. Oh shit.
Hey.
Come here, Donald. Come here, Donald.
Why am I leaving?
I'm ready to go. I don't know.
No, leave for shit.
Well, we caught her right there. That's perfect. Yeah, Donald. Perfecto. Perfecto. Hey. All right, so hey everyone. If you made it this far to the end of the video, I want to thank you so much for just, watching this. I really hope that you found value in this. My whole goal in this endeavor is, to give a voice to people, to dancers, and to give value to the dance community. So if I'm not giving value, it's kind of pointless. So I strongly urge you to please comment and let me know where I can improve, what I need to do better, what I'm doing wrong, and hopefully what I'm doing right, you know. But my overall goal is I want to give content. I want to be helpful. So please let me know where I can improve upon. I'm new to all this, you know, so I'm learning as I go. So I need like feedback. Please comment and just let me know how I can improve. I would greatly appreciate that. That means the world to me, just to be able to interact with you all, you know, have a conversation with you, and just, you know, see what you like and what you don't like. That means the world to me. I love interacting with you all. It means so much to me. But yeah, thank you so much for making it this far into the video. You know, I gotta say, please leave a like, subscribe. If you don't like it, then let me know why not. Hit the down like button, hit the unlike button. But you know, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Le digo así.